Chapter 671, The Sudden Appearance of Straw Hat Man. How many more treasures? Asked Chen Qingqing in surprise. A lot, Zhang Han replied after calculation. Chen Qingqing was shocked at Zhang Han's simple words. Looking at Zhang Han in astonishment without blinking his eyes, Chen Qingqing asked, Brother Han, how did you find so many treasures? I didn't sense them at all. Chen Han shook his head and smiled. I can smell them. Chen Qingqing was confused again. What does it mean? They marched forward to the right, and in half an hour they came to a canyon. Flowers and grass were flourishing in the canyon. In the center was a crystal-like willow about 1 meter high. There was a plant with 6 white petals hidden in the willow. Knowing Chen Qingqing would ask about the tree, Zhang Han introduced. Cloud willow can be made into cloud clear pill. Cloud clear pill is a kind of special antidote that can detoxify divine objects. It's amazing. Chen Qingqing slightly narrowed his eyes. Chen Qingqing knew that there were various divine objects with different functions, like Thunder Yang tree and Thunder Yang flower on Brother Han's mountain, while some divine objects were beneficial to cultivators and fought for by big sects. Some of them were useless or even noxious. Chen Qingqing was surprised at the fact that this holy object could detoxify the divine objects despite the gap level, which meant it was more important than he could imagine. Put it away, Brother Han, Chen Qingqing said, let's plant it on the mountain after we go back. Okay, Zhang Han smiled. He rushed towards Cloud Willow, stopped 5 meters in front of it, and slapped it 36 times. Cloud Willow was uprooted and put away in Zhang Han's space ring. Let's go. Zhang Han motioned Chen Qingqing to go straight to the left. More than 10 minutes later, they arrived at an inland lake. Under Chen Qingqing's gaze, Zhang Han made a movement with his right hand as if he was lifting something up. A holy object was found by him. Let's go. Zhang Han turned around and went to the next object with Chen Qingqing. He was not as lucky as before, and he only got a 3rd stage spirit treasure. His next objects were 5 3rd stage spirit treasures and more than 10 2nd stage spirit treasures. In this way, they visited more than 10 locations of treasures. When they started off again, Chen Qingqing saw light suddenly and turned his gaze at Zhang Han's nose. What he said embarrassed Zhang Han. Brother Han, do you have a dog nose? Why do you have such a good sense of smell? Zhang Han fell into silence with a darkened face. He thought Qingqing was right, but can you be more tactful? Zhang Han turned around and said, Qingqing, you are naughty recently. Ha ha ha, Chen Qingqing burst into laughter. Just a bit. Zhang Han was amused by him. Qingqing was his good friend and Zhang Han enjoyed playing jokes with him, except for Ziyan, Meng Meng, Zif, Zhang Li, and anyone who didn't know much about the martial arts world. There were so many people in awe of Zhang Han, therefore, Zhang Han cherished friends like Qingqing who could still make fun of him. Zhang Han enjoying the feeling of freedom. After thinking it over, Zhang Han explained, this ability is useful but it still had a lot of flaws. I'll give it up later. As one of Zhang Han's amazing abilities, Treasure Sniffing Nose got Zhang Han the nickname Treasure Immortal in his previous life. He had so many treasures that even the tips he gave others were enough for them to cultivate for 100 years. No one in the cultivation world knew how wealthy Treasure Immortal was. While everyone envied Zhang Han of his ability to get so many treasures, Zhang Han knew that it would be still difficult for him to get through the divine thunder over the sky if he continued to practice treasure-searching formulas and use treasure-sniffing nose. The supernatural power. What was more, now Zhang Han had 10 inches Danshan and a weird soul sense C, which might finally bring him a lightning punishment much more severe than the divine thunder over the sky. It takes a good blacksmith to make steel. Treasure-searching formulas were to serve for strength, and now Zhang Han's 10 inches Danshan and weird soul sense C had raised his starting point very high. Therefore, Zhang Han planned to take a better road. Maybe the gifted supernatural power like a dog nose was more suitable for that small black thing. All this could only be done after Zhang Han reached the divine realm. He was just at the building base stage now and was not capable to change the current situation. Shan Wangzhang was even more confused after hearing Zhang Han's explanation, but he was more interested in treasure hunting and soon forgot this matter. He didn't expect that one day treasure hunting would become like picking up treasure. Shan Wangzhang's eyes were shining as he asked, "Where to go?" "Turn right." "What are those treasures? Is there a holy object?" "Perhaps one of them is." "Okay, let's go." Shan Wangzhang laughed and rushed towards the right with Zhang Han. They searched for treasures in a large area in this very mysterious place. Shan Wangzhang was excited to see all kinds of spirit treasures, while Zhang Han remained calm. The number of these treasures was large in Shan Wangzhang's eye, but Zhang Han was not surprised at it at all. Zhang Han was thinking about another thing. He wondered why the cultivator who had drawn that map hadn't taken all the treasures with him. What did he mean? There might be two possibilities. One was that the cultivator had specifically left the treasures for the one who wanted them, and the other was that he didn't get through the apparition zone. Zhang Han felt that the former was more likely. Was that figure his father's? The man was not like his father, but Zhang Han felt him familiar. Who is that man? The recorded voice was his father's, who left Zhang Han this map in the gem. This land rich in treasures was worth Wind Snow School Pavilion to search for. Alas, why did my father leave so many secrets to me? Zhang Han didn't know whether to cry or to laugh. He looked forward to seeing his father and telling him he needn't prepare anything. Zhang Han was confident that both his father and he could reach the highest level easily. I'll see him soon. Zhang Han's eyes were glowing as he looked forward. Anyway, the gate of the worldlet was to be opened and the time for his family to reunite was coming. Shan Wangzhang was busy following Zhang Han and gathering all the treasures there. On Mount New Moon, Dai lay on the ground with Meng sitting on his belly, who was mumbling with her mouth pouted. Why hasn't Papa come back after such a long time? Mama, it's been so long, is Papa coming back soon? Call him and ask him. Xian, standing beside Dai, shook her head helplessly and said, "It's only one day, Papa will be back in a few more days, don't worry, Humphrey." Meng angrily threw her toy on the grass in front of Dai and complained, "I want Papa to be back now." Ow, ow. Dai was taken aback by Meng. "My gosh, my little host is angry. Why hasn't my host been back?" Woohoo, Little Hai gave a low cry. Little Hai hesitated because it didn't know how to coax its little host. "How I wish my host was here, little host is always happy with him." Xian went to Meng and touched her head to comfort her. Meng would cry if she kept ignoring her feeling. Xian said, "I'll call your Papa in the evening, and ask him when he will be back. If I get through to him, I'll ask him to come back earlier." "Okay," Meng replied, still pouting. "Be obedient if you want Mama to call Papa in the evening. Do you understand?" asked Xian. "I see, I'll be obedient," Meng replied in a low voice. "Did Mama say that you can't throw things casually? What if you accidentally step on the toy left in the grass when you invite Martin here? It will hurt your feet. What should we do now?" Xian reminded Meng. Humphrey Meng pursed her lips a little reluctantly, but she still fell down obediently and murmured, "I'll pick it up." She slid down Dai's belly and picked up the toy awkwardly. Seeing this, Gai Xingkong and Wang Zanping, who were enjoying their tea time not far away, shook their heads and smiled. Meng was a happy and lucky girl. Gai Xingkong sighed with emotion. It was peaceful there for the time being. All of a sudden, Little Hai's ears moved as it turned its gaze at the dense forest in the back mountain area. It was confused that nothing strange was found after 2 seconds. In fact, there was really something strange. In a dark place in the forest, a pair of greedy eyes were staring at the direction of Dai, accompanied by a low husky voice. "Blood, blood, blood, blood. Divine object. Divine object, blood. Divine object." Phew. The man hiding in the dense forest looked at Gai Xingkong with resentment. "Kill him, kill him, kill them." The whole face of that man was hidden in a straw hat. As he spoke to himself, he retreated, and his figure slowly dissipated. The Straw Hat Man, who had recovered his strength and improved a lot, had found this mountain, while Gai Xinkong and the other martial artists didn't notice it at all. Little Hai sensed something strange. On Zhang Han's side, he was searching back and forth with Chen Chenking for treasures, making their progress relatively slow. The only place visible to the naked eye was the towering mountain in the distance ahead, which must be the most central place. Zhang Han was not in a hurry, and he also wanted to take the peripheral treasures. I'm going to take all the treasures. As time went on, they were getting closer and closer to the mountain. While the mountain seemed not to be large from a distance, they found it more and more spectacular as the distance gradually shortened. Just at this moment, plop, plop, 10 embarrassed Divine Realm martial artists finally fought their way out of the apparitions and came there. Damn it, we finally go out. My brain almost exploded just now. Damn it, how could there be so many strange things? Phew, it seems that we are safe for the time being. I will go mad if we find those things here. They were pale, blood-stained, and lackluster in their eyes. They were more or less injured, although the apparitions could only hurt their souls. Their bodies were scratched as they cut through the ice cones. Luckily, they finally broke out. Here, said Vern. Vern, the Ice Wolf King, and his two brothers were slightly injured and they had strong self-healing abilities. Taking a few looks at this land, Vern said, let's search for the treasures separately, and I won't interfere with you. We three will meet at the foot of the mountain on the shady side of the mountain ahead. There might be danger in that mountain, and Vern thought maybe they could join hands to climb it. Others, of course, understood what he meant, and scattered treasure hunting satisfied them. Therefore, they answered immediately, okay, just do what Vern says. Let's search the neighborhood separately, and gather in the shady side of the mountain in 2 hours. So they made such a happy decision. 2 hours passed and they gathered. Everyone seemed to be confused and depressed. What's going on? I got nothing. I got nothing, either. There is no treasure here. We're here for nothing. There was silence. Chapter 672, Surprise. Vern, the Ice Wolf King, frowned. What's going on? Why is there no treasure in this dangerous place? This is not reasonable. Whether it is a relic or a secret place, there will be treasures. There should be more treasures in places like this surrounded by thousands of monsters. Wait, did someone come earlier than us? Hiss, Emperor King and Zhang Han. It must be them. We killed everyone coming in, but all the ice cones were complete. This showed that they had a safe way to get through that place. They came in a lot earlier than us. The crowd was nervous and angry as they spoke. They were in a bad mood because they killed all and got nothing. An aged man with white hair in the crowd reminded them, I just passed by a place with only a few mysterious treasures. A large area that has been excavated. His words surprised many people present. It seemed that Emperor King and Zhang Han found lots of treasures. I was in the same situation just now. Yes, me too. There was silence. Hearing the discussion, One Eye grinned. Who will finally take all those treasures? It depends, as long as they are still here. I suggest that when we see them. One Eye made a gesture as if he was cutting someone's throat. Everyone present looked at each other, and even Vern fell into silence. When they came in, Vern arranged Zhang Han and Chen Chenking at the back of the team, where they were safer, in order to return a favor to the warlord of Chan clan. Yet, they left and arrived there by a shorter way. Vern thought he had done enough. An innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. The other 7 martial artists at the Divine Realm would hate him if Vern tried to stop them. What was more, Vern's Ice Wolf clan was also in lack of natural precious materials. As the head of a clan, he must put the interests of the clan above all his personal preferences. It's a pity and you're greedy. Vern didn't really want to be involved in the joint hunt. Still, Zhang Han and Chen Chenking left nothing to them, which made the rest martial artists extremely angry. Now they just wanted to kill the 2 guys. In that case, One Eye raised his head, looked forward, and said slowly, "Let's capture them." Swish, swish, swish. Everyone rushed towards the large mountain. When they got close to the mountain, they found it covered by a layer of ice, just like a large iron tower. Its width was thousands of times that of a tower, and there was no end to be seen on both sides. At first, there was a slope on the mountain. When they reached the mountainside, it went vertically upward, and uneven areas were everywhere. It was not difficult for all the Divine Realm martial artists to fly to the mountain top directly. However, why is gravity increasing? Vern said seriously, "I feel a lot heavier. The mountain is like a magnet. Wait." The other man looked up and flew towards the mountain top. However hard he tried, he only jumped for more than 5 meters before he fell. Bang! With the loud noise, his feet touched the ground and crushed the stones scattered on the mountain. "I can't get into the air." The others tried one by one. They found that at more than 5 meters, the mountain's pull on them would multiply, stopping them from flying at will. In this extremely dangerous place, they would face more peril if they were unable to fly. "We have just reached the very edge of the mountain, and the pull here is so strong. What will happen at the mountain top?" Everyone got nervous. This was the last thing they wanted to see. They still had a way to escape from a very powerful enemy, but dealing with this situation was hard for them. At their feet, the mountain body extended upward at an angle of more than 10 degrees. It was full of scattered stones rather than ice and snow. "There must be a reason why things here are abnormal. We may be in a place of great evil. Let's go forward to have a look." They continued up the mountain, although the mountain road was not steep, and they felt like stepping on the flat ground rather than climbing the mountain. The altitude was getting higher and higher. The boulders under our feet were just brown and now they are white. Vern looked carefully at the boulders and then to both sides. The difference between brown and white stones was obvious, as if they had just crossed a watershed. "Wait." Suddenly, a blue-haired man shouted, "My strength has dropped a little." His face changed slightly as he looked at the stone and different colors under his feet. He moved back to the brown stone area and raised his eyebrows. "My strength has not changed on the brown stones, but has been suppressed on the white stones," he concluded. He was the weakest of the 10 martial artists in the Divine Realm, but he was the best at controlling his spiritual force. It's true. 10 minutes later, they moved on with darkened faces. They found that in the area of white stones, the further upward they went, the more suppressed their strength was. 20 minutes later, the white stones turned blue. The suppression of their soul sense began. They did not want to retreat since they were this far, therefore, they moved cautiously forward for another 20 minutes. They came to an area strewn with green stones. The full repression of them began. "My strength has fallen to that of Grandmaster Peak. I have no soul sense now. What shall we do? If our strength is suppressed to the level of ordinary people when we arrive at the top, there is no hope of winning." Most of the martial artists were shocked at these words. They all stopped for fear that they might lose all their strength. Both our spiritual force and spiritual sense mind trick were weakened here, which meant it was a dangerous land and perhaps all the holy objects are suppressed here. I suggest that we continue to move forward and see what will happen when our strength drops to the level of Grandmaster, Vern said in a low voice. Vern didn't tell them the other reason. Even if their strength was suppressed here, he and his 2 clansmen could turn into werewolves and become the strongest force of the team. No matter what kind of danger, Vern was confident that he could retreat safely with his clansmen. He didn't care about the other martial artists. The one-eyed man at Heaven Stage was also confident. He was able to retreat even if his strength had fallen to that of a Grand Master. Most importantly, they had arrived there and didn't want to return empty-handed. Upon thinking that they hadn't gotten any treasures yet, they began cursing Emperor King and Zhang Han. They moved on again. Grandmaster Peak, Grandmaster Late Stage, Grandmaster Middle Stage. When their strength had fallen to that of Grandmaster Early Stage, The stones ahead of them turned black. These black stones were actually very regular stone slabs, like tombstones standing in front of them, which was very frightening. Stop. Vern's face changed as he stretched out his hand to stop the others. What's the matter? The others turned their gaze at Vern. Vern's eyes were now in the shape of snowflakes. Looking ahead, he said nervously, there is going to be a crisis ahead. It will be a fierce battle since most of us are at Grandmaster early stage. It will be very difficult for us to go up the mountain. What can we do? The others were in a panic. They had overcome all sorts of difficulties and were unwilling to be forced to retreat. They would be in danger if they kept going forward, but they didn't want to make a futile trip. Listen, something is moving there. Suddenly, the yellow-haired man turned his gaze to the left and listened carefully. Everyone fell into silence, and they also heard a faint sound. They must be Emperor King and Zhang Han Yang. Let's go to meet them. They came to an agreement quickly. The sound on the left side was very loud. It must be Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing fighting with unknown things after they had entered the stone tablet forest. The martial artists, led by Vern, felt that they could take the opportunity to pass through the stone forest and look for an opportunity to kill the two guys. They rushed to the left side without hesitation. They did not expect that the area of the mountain was so large that they ran for more than half an hour before they saw the two people in front of them from a distance. Hiss! They gasped in fear when they saw clearly what was happening. I didn't expect them to get through. A 100-meter straight road, is this what you call a crisis, Vern? It's too easy. Someone began to doubt whether Vern was right. Now that Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing could fight a way out with 4 hands, it must be easy for them to conquer the stone forest. Choose a way to go if you want to test your strength. Vern frowned and fought back with words. He didn't want to compromise. The man was speechless. Only fools would go to find a way to the mountain top now. Let's go to have a look. At the most central place, they set foot on the road opened in the forest of stones. In front of them a kilometer away, Zhang Han and Emperor King were resting on the roadside. They discovered the group of martial artists at the same time. The distance between them was soon shortened to 100 meters. One Eye grinned in excitement. Hi, we've met again. He was eager to kill Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing. Glang. As soon as One Eye finished shouting, he heard a different sound. Frightening sword chi burst out suddenly, which was 100 meters long and lit up the sky. Retreat. Everyone's face changed as they rushed back as quick as they could. Within a minute, the flat ground where they had been was replaced by a several-meter deep gully. Their faces darkened. They were unable to afford such a large amount of energy considering their current strength level. Swish, swish, swish. Looking up, they saw Zhang Han holding his demon dancing sword and looking at them indifferently. Then they heard his warning, get away from the line or die. All the newcomers were surprised at his words and got angry. What did you say? One Eye's expression was ferocious as he summoned a black iron stick. It was a divine object, the same as Zhang Han's demon dancing sword. Still, Zhang Han could only activate 70% of the demon dancing sword. I'll kill you. One Eye roared. He rushed towards the gully and jumped over it. The 9 men behind them looked at each other and then decided to follow him. Now that they were in a temporary team, they should unite against the enemy. Besides, they were eager to take back the treasure from Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing. Ha ha. Zhang Han sneered. He didn't care about their plan at all. As soon as One Eye jumped over the gully, Zhang Han made a casting gesture and thrust his right hand forward. 4 symbols formation, white tiger chopping. Buzz. All of a sudden, all the cards surrounding Zhang Han started blinking. The black cards looked profound now. It was the first time for the set of cards, which had been upgraded to divine weapons, to launch an attack on Zhang Han's orders. White Tiger was the totem of killing, therefore, the soul of White Tiger helped Zhang Han to make some deadly killing action. His rivals were a group of martial artists, whose strength had been weakened to the same level as that of Grandmaster early stage. puff. After a dull sound, a 3-meter-long card suddenly appeared above One Eye's head. Ow! Everyone heard a tiger roar. The card was pressed down by invisible forces. No! One Eye's face changed. He tried to raise the divine black stick with his right hand, but it was too late. Bang! That black card was like a mountain, and One Eye was hit into the 3-meter deep ground. Clatter! For everyone behind One Eye, their hearts seemed to miss a beat. They tried to slow down by any means and finally stopped at the edge of the gully. When they looked up again, there was astonishment and fear in their eyes. How could it be possible? His spiritual sense mind trick is so strong, how could it be possible? Everyone knew that Zhang Han had made that move with his soul sense, which killed One Eye. They were scared. Whoosh! Zhang Han withdrew his card and fixed his gaze on Vern for 3 seconds, as if he was considering his next move. All the 9 martial artists, including Vern, felt cold on their backs under Zhang Han's gaze. They were ready to launch their most powerful attack and fight for time to escape. To their surprise, Zhang Han just looked at them for 3 seconds. Then he said, "Get away from the line or die. Go find another way to the mountain top. I'll kill you all if I see you again." Zhang Han looked at Chen Chenking and kept going up the mountain with him. The other shivering martial artists were left behind. Why does he have soul sense? Is he a super martial artist at the Earth Realm? Otherwise, he would have killed us at the entrance just now. They fell into silence. Powerful martial artists at the Earth Realm were famous for their changeable mood, just like when they met Grand Masters or Chi Strength Masters. They often killed low-level martial artists at will, so they thought Zhang Han would kill them in the same way if he was really at the Earth Realm. Zhang Han Yang is said to be at Grandmaster peak, but why does he have his own soul sense? The aged martial artist sighed and said, "He has shown his incantation in Hong Kong and Linhai City. Now that he has soul sense, it was kind of him to now use his incantation and spare our lives. We should obey his order, keep away from the line, and fight a way forward on our own. There were only 100 meters left, and we will get through soon." The others agreed with him. They came to one side and began to fight. 2 hands suddenly stretched out from under each stone tablet, followed by rotten bodies, who were at Grandmaster level or above. My gosh, how could they blaze that path 100 meters in width? Each of them guarded a width of 2 meters and struggled to keep the total width of 20 meters forward. They didn't know the specific reason why Zhang Han had spared their lives. Zhang Han's spiritual sense energy had almost run out. His strength was also weakened there, but the 10 inches Danshan helped him to maintain his spiritual force and soul sense, which were much more powerful than those of ordinary martial artists. Still, the more he used his spiritual force and soul sense, the less powerful they were, even if he had eaten plenty of medicinal pills to restore them. Zhang Han and Chen Chenking hadn't reached the mountain top yet. There seems to be no way ahead. Chen Chenking shook his head. "Shall we climb the mountain? I've suppressed my strength to that of peak strength in your way." "Yes, your strength will be at the divine realm for 10 minutes when you stop suppressing them." Zhang Han nodded and said, "I'm ready too, but I'm not sure if we will be in danger at the mountain top." "I don't care, I'll enjoy the battle just now. We have taken enough treasures, and it will still be a satisfying trip if we go back now," Chen Chenking said and laughed. "It's not enough." Zhang Han looked up at the mountain top and shook his head. Far from enough. They took enough treasures, but none of them were needed by Zhang Han or could benefit him much. "Hope to get a big surprise there," Zhang Han murmured. He expected the surprise to be bigger and sudden. After running for hundreds of meters, they stepped on the mountain and ran up parallel to the ground. As they ran, they found themselves more and more oppressed. Zhang Han summoned his demon dancing sword, while Chen Chenking was holding his unpredictable shadow sword in his hand. Half an hour later, they got into the clouds, and the surroundings were all white. Through this area, they found that the whole mountain turned into clear water. Looking up, they found another layer of clouds 1,000 meters above them. double sky? Zhang Han slightly narrowed his eyes. There must be better treasures. Really, it's a worthy trip. Chen Qingqing was excited. He didn't care about where to go as long as he was with Zhang Han. In the process of breaking through the barrier, Zhang Han held a water spirit stone with his left hand and a flood dragon card with his right hand. They passed the test smoothly. Yet, for others, the test here was not so simple. After passing through the second cloud, Zhang Han and Chen Qingqing suddenly found that the mountain above turned into sand. There seemed to be numerous small eddies with strong suction. Try this. Chen Qingqing took out a brown stone. Zhang Han took it and threw it forward. Suddenly, strands of sand combined into a boat, carrying them forward. After passing through the clouds again, the mountain in front of them turned into ice. They kept thrusting their swords into the ice and climbing up. The next part of the mountain turned into fire. They found it much more difficult. Zhang Han thought about it and then came up with a plan. He activated the black tortoise card with his strong spiritual sense energy and provided Chen Qingqing and himself with a solid defense. They got through 8 layers of clouds and then reached the 9th layer. Zhang Han whispered, "I've seen the real 9 layers of the celestial sphere. It is just a mini version here, and our destination is on the 9th layer, where we can find the best opportunity. Let's go." Chen Qingqing took the lead to rush into the clouds, followed by Zhang Han. When they got through the final layer of clouds, they saw no road ahead. They stood up straight to look around, and saw a small fraction of the sun to the right of the clouds. Under the blue sky, they were now on a large platform with a hole in the center like a chimney. There were many ghost-like figures dancing in the air. Zhang Han was surprised and then smiled with joy. This trip was really worthwhile. Chapter 673, Boat of Curse appeared again. "What's that?" Chen Qingqing asked in confusion as he saw the scene. The diameter of the platform in front of them was about 1 kilometer, but the ground they could step on was only 10 meters in width. In the center was a deep pit, and Chen Qingqing couldn't see its bottom at all. There was profound qi in the cave, as if there were nebulae constantly rotating below. Chen Qingqing sensed unknown energy in it, which was as old as the planet. He had never seen such a weird scene, but he knew that Brother Han might be familiar with it. Since they came in, they had not experienced any risk, except for a fierce battle at the stone tablet. They had made it all the way there. Chen Qingqing was now used to asking Zhang Han whenever he met something he didn't know. Zhang Han chuckled, "They are thunder spirits." "Thunder spirit, what's that, a kind of thunder?" asked Chen Qingqing. "No, they are the core energy of thunder. It took them hundreds and thousands of years to grow to be thunder spirits, and now they look like happy penguins." Zhang Han looked at the penguin-like, light blue thunder spirits swimming in the hole before him and said, "They are given birth by heaven and earth, and perhaps some of them would become real self-conscious creatures after thousands of years, which are at a higher level and more precious. Though they are not self-conscious now and just a little smarter than before, they have plenty of thunder power for us." "Thunder power, what's the usage of it? Can you get thunder attributes with the help of it?" Chen Qingqing was confused. Generally speaking, everyone was born with his or her own attributes and constitution. Chen Qingqing was born with some power of blood and could absorb real king dragon blood, which was called inheritance. Some attributes could be gotten in other ways after one was born, but they couldn't change one's constitution thoroughly. At least, Chen Qingqing had never heard about it, yet Zhang Han knew too much and Chen Qingqing decided to follow him. The power of thunder may be useless in some cases or for some, but it is suitable for us at present. Zhang Han said looking into the hole, "There are so many thunder spirits here, and one of them must be the thunder spirit god. Let's find it and catch it." "Okay, how can we find it in thousands of thunder spirits?" asked Chen Qingqing. Chen Qingqing didn't know thunder spirits well, and he could only act as a helper. Thunder spirits don't know how to launch an attack, but the thunder spirit god has a sense of crisis and can make commands to other thunder spirits. "I'll go find it and you must keep it within a scope of 100 meters, leave the rest to me." "I see, Chen Qingqing nodded. Let's start and finish it in 20 minutes. Zhang Han took a glance at Chen Qingqing. Their chi was rocketing, breaking through the suppression of the mountain, and reaching the level of Grand Master Peak. Chen Qingqing was still a little more powerful than Zhang Han. Whoosh whoosh! They rushed forward. Zhang Han took the lead to jump into the hole and release his spiritual force along with Chen Qingqing. Then Zhang Han began falling down while controlling his speed. During this period, all the 18 cards were surrounding Zhang Han and the demon dancing sword was in his hand. Chen Qingqing carried nothing besides his unpredictable shadow sword. They reached some place thousands of meters below the platform and saw the thunder spirits. Getting closer to the thunder spirits, Chen Qingqing found that those penguin-like thunder spirits were just blue light balls with fine lightning in them, like a Tesla coil. Zhang Han didn't waste time looking at them carefully, because they couldn't be distinguished by the eye. When they fell to a depth of 2,000 meters, they were in the middle of the thunder spirit group. Zhang Han took a deep breath and gathered all his remaining power of soul sense to his eyes. True spirit eye. Swish, swish. In an instant, Zhang Han's pupils turned into two black whirlpools, and his chi changed greatly. It seemed that he had become a spiritual creature bred by heaven and earth, and integrated with them. Under Zhang Han's gaze, the shape of all the thunder spirits changed. Now they were like fine lightning, bright or dim. Zhang Han looked around quickly. He could only use true spirit eye for 3 seconds. It was enough for Zhang Han to find the thunder spirit god in all these thunder spirits. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zhang Han kept searching. And finally, in the most remote place on the right side of the lower side, he found an unusual light ball. Got you. Zhang Han flashed towards that light ball. Chen Qingqing followed him and was ready to restrict the thunder spirit Zhang Han found. The other thunder spirits were not aware of what was happening, but the thunder spirit god sensed the crisis. Whoosh! It ran so fast. Zhang Han was fast, too. When he approached the thunder spirit, he stretched out his right hand. All of a sudden, blood mist burst out from Zhang Han's right palm. Zhang Han began chanting while making a casting gesture. The thunder spirit god was covered by the blood mist instantly. 10 minutes. Zhang Han closed his eyes. Chen Qingqing didn't answer Zhang Han, because he was focusing on the thunder spirit covered in blood, knowing it was his target. He didn't expect that blocking the thunder spirit god would be so difficult. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Chen Qingqing moved with the thunder spirit god and blocked its way with his sword. The thunder spirit god began to call its fellow thunder spirits for help. Clatter. Seeing so many thunder spirits rushing towards him, Chen Qingqing was shocked. He felt like he was going to get an electric shock. He guessed right. 5 minutes later, Chen Qingqing's hair stood up. He kept blocking the thunder spirit god. 10 minutes later, Zhang Han opened his eyes. Swallow. Zhang Han opened his mouth towards the thunder spirit god. The thunder spirit god couldn't help but fly towards Zhang Han and was swallowed by him. Under Chen Qingqing's gaze, Brother Han's eyes turned into lightning and all the thunder spirits around him became larger. All the larger flashes of lightning were blinking while moving upwards, forcing Chen Qingqing to step back. Qingqing, protect me, I need 5 hours. Zhang Han said and sat down in the air, cross-legged, with hundreds and thousands of flashes of lightning surrounding him. Now he looked like the god of thunder. After digesting the thunder spirit god and absorbing all the thunder spirits, Zhang Han was confident that he could multiply the clouds above his soul sense sea. The number was likely to be 9,000 if he was fortunate. Most importantly, he could finally fill in what T-Wood Thunder was missing before. The moment he reached the innateness stage, he could get a real newborn T-Wood Thunder. Zhang Han sighed with emotion. It surprised him that this Scent Warrior planet was full of scattered treasures even if it was sealed. He was the only one who thought so. With the gradual expansion of the scope of lightning, Chen Qingqing retreated again and again, and finally returned to the edge of the upper plane. Lightning was rolling in this volcano-like place, which shocked Chen Qingqing. He thought it was unnecessary for him to protect Zhang Han. No one could break into the lightning screen including himself. Seconds ticked by. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours had passed. Cough. Damn it, what's this? We are here at last. 100 meters away from the right, a line of 7 figures burst out of the sky. They were Vern with the other 6 fellow martial artists. There were 9 of them at the foot of the mountain, but only 7 could get here. As for the other 2, they might have retreated or died somewhere, but Chen Qingqing didn't care. He glanced at the 7 martial artists and didn't say anything. Even if Chen Qingqing was not protecting Zhang Han here, it was impossible for them to break into the lightning barrier. The height of the lightning barrier had dropped a few hundred meters in the past 4 hours. Chen Qingqing knew it was absorbed by Brother Han, which shocked him. He was so curious about Zhang Han's constitution. When the new-coming martial artists saw what was on the platform, their faces changed. Nothing is here. We risk our lives to come here. What will we get? They were depressed and saw Zhang Han in the lightning. Zhang Han Yang is there. What is he doing? Swish, swish, swish. Everyone turned their gaze at Chen Qingqing. Chen Qingqing shrugged. All the treasures we found are kept by him, or you can try it with me if you are sure you can defeat me. Chen Qingqing broke the seal on himself and released his chi of a Grand Master. All 7 martial artists could not breathe for an instant. Vern frowned and sighed. Okay, we. Crack. As soon as he finished, there was a roar coming from the distance. The sound was mysterious and profound, and no one knew what it was. They looked in all directions, and when they looked back, everyone was scared. Black boat. It appeared again. My gosh, why does it appear? What's the reason? What is it going to do? What can we do? We have just got here. Shall we run down the mountain? Vern and his fellows narrowed their eyes in fear. Chen Qingqing turned to look at the direction of the roar. He saw that black boat. It was the boat of curse. What is it doing here? Chen Qingqing suddenly felt something was wrong. He felt his heart in his mouth. The boat was one of the unsolved mysteries of the world, and no one knew what it was and where it came from. Looking at the boat of curse getting closer and closer, Chen Qingqing was nervous and the perspiration was running down his forehead. Its goal seems to be arriving here. Chapter 674, Emperor King went mad. Brother Han is still cultivating. What can I do? Chen Qingqing felt cold on his back. He realized that he couldn't handle this matter. The boat of curse must be making trouble here at this time. Crack, crack, crack. It was like the sound of pieces of wood pressing against each other. Chen Qingqing remembered the model of the black pearl they made when making the movie Pirates of the Caribbean. That ship, to ordinary people, was what this boat of curse was to him. Chen Qingqing was frightened now. He couldn't breathe. He was sure that the boat of curse was heading for this platform. Looking from afar, the giant boat getting closer was like a mountain, within the visible range of the naked eye, except for the mountain under their feet. The rest of the place was surrounded by clouds. The sun was still in the west corner, the same as the scene Zhang Han and Chen Qingqing had seen when they had just arrived there, as if the sun had not moved at all. Chen Qingqing knew that this was just a mapping of a spatial node of the main continent. The sun is 150 million kilometers away from the Earth, 100 times the diameter of the Earth. It left a different freeze frame in every relic, but it didn't affect the nature of the sun at all. It could be seen that the scene in this relic was illusory. There were endless dangers hidden in the beautiful scenery. The world of relics saw secret places. Facing the boat of curse, which was slowly approaching him, Chen Qingqing didn't know what to do. Vern and his followers were also stunned. What if it knocks us down? We will fall to our death even if we restore our heaven stage strength. What can we do? Run. The word uttered by the last person was the truth. When they were about to leave, they saw Chen Qingqing jump into the hole. The chi surrounding Chen Qingqing was at the same level as that of Grand Master Peak, which was shocking. How could he restore his strength? Vern and the others were in astonishment, and they knew it was very kind of Chen Qingqing to spare their lives just now, since they were still in Russia. They didn't know the truth. Chen Qingqing could maintain his strength at Grandmaster Peak for 3 minutes, and he couldn't waste unnecessary time on them. Happily, Chen Qingqing intimidated Vern and his group by words, and now he was able to jump down with the rest of his strength and save Zhang Han. Nevertheless, Chen Qingqing felt a horrible pressure when he broke into the lightning barrier. Boom! After Chen Qingqing approached, hundreds of bolts of lightning seemed to turn into fierce beasts, showing sharp fangs and rushing to Chen Qingqing instantly. Chen Qingqing was surprised and hurried to retreat. He was able to resist 10 or 20 bolts of this kind of lightning, but hundreds of lightning bolts would kill him. What can I do? Chen Qingqing gritted his teeth and forced the remaining spiritual force into his throat. He shouted as loudly as he could, "Brother Han, get out of here. Brother Han, run. The boat of curse is coming. Brother Han, come here. It is several hundred meters away. Be quick. Come here. Please." Standing at the edge of the hole, Chen Qingqing stared at the boat of curse in fear while roaring with all his strength. It was slowly approaching the platform. Vern and the others fell into silence. They had never seen Emperor King shouting in panic like this, which showed his concern about Zhang Han. Zhang Han Yang, sitting in thousands of bolts of lighting, didn't answer Chen Qingqing's call. Even his eyelashes didn't vibrate at all. Obviously, he was at a critical moment of his cultivation and had thoroughly shielded himself from the outside world. Before Zhang Han made this decision, he had considered the boat of curse. He was familiar with curses and knew all the objects related to curses, like the ghosts and apparitions he had seen before, preferred being in dark. There must be other dark things in this world, and the boat of curse was supposed to reside there. Besides, the Yang lightning here was a curse killer, and the boat of curse didn't like to get close to the thunder spirits, which would consume its energy. All the dark things the boat liked couldn't be found here. Zhang Han didn't expect to see something that shouldn't have happened here. Zhang Han would question the boat of curse if he saw it. If it was really at the mercy of curse, it shouldn't have come here. Yet, there were no absolutes in this world, and Zhang Han sensed something unusual when he was still cultivating. His ears moved, but he didn't wake up. Brother Han. Looking at the boat of curse 100 meters away, Chen Qingqing made his last cry with the last of his spiritual force. Then he looked at the boat helplessly. Vern and his fellows didn't know what to say at this moment. How can we escape? This was a problem they were facing. We can't escape. Vern, the ice wolf Wang Vern sighed, we all know how we came here. The mountain is so narrow that it is easy for it to be broken by the boat. If we can't fly, there is no way for us to escape, including running down the mountain. Are we going to be killed here with Zhang Han? The yellow-haired man was nervous. The platform fell into a dead silence. No one wanted to be killed here. There's no way, and we can only rely on our luck. We will be safe if it hits the mountain and destroys the suppression of the mountain. But we will die if we can't break the mountain suppression. The aged man said slowly. Everyone felt his heart in his throat and could hear his own heart beating. The giant boat of curse approached them. They gradually held their breath, as if their hearts stopped beating and felt the suffocating pressure. Everyone, including Chen Qingqing, slowly raised their head. They were all shocked by the boat of curse 10 meters above them, which blocked the sky. What was their feeling now? It was a fear of the unknown. They thought they were strong enough, but they were still too small for some other more mysterious things. Just like ants, they knew that if the ship wanted to kill them, all it needed to do was to land vertically. Luckily, the boat of curse didn't land in a hurry. When it reached a place above the hole, crack, crack. In the loud buzz, the stern of the boat was raised slowly, and the bow was down. Obviously, it was ready to rush into the hole. No. Chen Qingqing stared at the boat and black light began gathering in his hand. Then he rushed towards the boat with an unpredictable shadow sword. Chen Qingqing made his first attack before he reached the boat, which shocked the other martial artists. They didn't expect Chen Qingqing to be still so powerful at this moment. Still, the first wave of attack disappeared before it reached the boat head. as if it were swallowed by a bottomless pit. The boat of curse didn't care about Chen Qinking's moves at all. Only a little black mist around the boat floated towards Chen Qingking and beat him into the air the moment they touched each other. Puff! Chen Qingking vomited out a mouthful of blood. His spirit immediately withered down, and he looked helplessly away from the direction of the mountain. That giant boat began to crash into the hole. The width of the hull was smaller than the diameter of the pit, but the bow suddenly enlarged during the collision. No! Jump! Run! Vern let out a low hiss. Suddenly, his skin changed and bristles came out of it. He was getting bigger and bigger, and gradually became a wolf more than 3 meters tall. The wolf was white and looked powerful, and the same was true of his other 2 clansmen. After finishing the transformation, they jumped out in an instant. The others were showing their supernatural power, too. They couldn't hide anything at this critical moment, otherwise, they would fall to their death even if they were at heaven stage. They had no choice but to hope that Boat of Curse would shatter the laws of repression in the mountains. Kaboom! All of a sudden, like an explosion or a volcanic eruption, the huge mountain top was smashed to pieces. Rocks were flying, and a cloud of ash filled the whole area. As they fell, they could see that the mountain was devoured by the Boat of Curse. With the roar, the Boat of Curse descended and was finally covered with dust and fog. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was the last scene they saw. All the people here, including Chen Qingking, were suppressed by the mountain's rules. After Chen Qingking made a move, the methods Zhang Han taught him disappeared. Now he had no strength and was suppressed to the level of heaven stage. The free fall movement was very exciting, even if these people were martial artists. The real free landing gave them cold on their backs. Chen Qingking and the others were now bungee jumping from the mountain top, but they were not wearing safety ropes. It was a critical moment. Everyone turned pale, including Chen Qingking, who was still thinking about what had happened. Brother Han, how can he survive? The others only cared about their own lives. My strength is still suppressed by the mountain. That aged man was frightened to find he couldn't control his body at all. When the others were about to say something, whoosh, bang, from the clouds above, a huge rock flew towards them quickly. It was so fast that no one could react at all. The boulder slapped the oldest warrior face to face on the mountain. What? Vern was shocked, not knowing the reason. The boulder also falls freely, but why is it so fast? They looked up and suddenly found that thousands of pieces of rubble were falling from above. At this time, the mountain seemed to become a magnet, and those rocks fell after a period of time like iron slag. What is going on? They didn't know the reason, but they felt that they were someone's targets now. I'll be killed, Vern said in a hoarse voice. Boom. Just when they had closed their eyes in despair, ready to meet death, a louder sound came out. They felt the whole mountain trembling. Yet, the repression from the mountains continued. We are done. Once again, Vern despaired and looked at the boulder that was getting closer and closer. He roared, ah 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 ah. He thought they were his last words. While roaring, he closed his eyes. Ah ah ah. He made 7 to 8 roars. Why hasn't it come? He was suddenly stunned, and another huge stone was right in front of him. Why hadn't it hit him? What is going on? He was afraid to open his eyes. He was also afraid that when he opened his eyes, the boulder would fall. He didn't want to see his own bloody scene. Ah ah. Vern roared again until he was out of breath. Suddenly, a weak voice came from his side. Commander. What are you doing? Huh? Vern opened his eyes. Hiss. He narrowed his eyes in astonishment. He was not at the entrance of the deep pit and entrance of the secret place. Ha ha ha, I'm alive. He burst out laughing as if he went mad. The other 2 of his clansmen, and all the rest of the Divine Realm martial artists, were 10 meters in front of him. We are saved, we are alive. We are out, we are not doomed to be killed. We are so lucky. Their words confused the hundreds of Ice Wolf clan members and the other Grand Masters present who had been waiting for them. All the onlookers felt cold on their back and saw astonishment in each other's eyes. What happened inside? They seemed to have met a big crisis, all of them, more than a dozen Divine Realm martial artists. They seemed to be reborn. What on earth did they encounter? Perhaps, wait, I remember many martial artists at Grandmaster Peak were in it. Where are Master One Eye, Master Ollie, and the others? They had many questions, but now none of them dared to speak. Usually, these masters in front of them were moody, not shocked and excited as they were now. The members of the Ice Wolf clan, who knew their leader well, went to him and asked, "Commander, what happened?" Alas, Vern, who looked depressed, suddenly sighed and replied, there. Everyone cocked up their ears. He went on to say, "It was terrible. We're lucky to be back alive. It seems that besides One Eye and Ollie, 2 others have also died there. Only 6 of the 10 martial artists at the Divine Realm came back." The news stunned all the onlookers. Just at this moment, arrow sounded, and all of a sudden, all the people in the audience were stunned. Even a few people were injured by the shockwave, which made their ears bleed. Swish, swish, swish. All the people on the scene turned their gaze to the other side. The chi and strong wind surrounding Emperor King were very wild and his eyes were dark, giving them a mysterious feeling. Buzz, the unpredictable shadow sword in his right hand seemed to interpret its owner's mood, and suddenly sent out a faint buzz. It sounded sad. Whoosh. All of a sudden, Chen King's figure moved and swayed slightly, then he came to the pit and fell into it. When he dropped a few hundred meters, he saw only a large area of soil, and the original wave of light had no longer existed. "It's impossible." Chen King roared and waved the demon dancing sword at high speed. The horrible energy he released scared the other martial artists. "He is so strong." Vern couldn't believe what he had seen. Vern knew he couldn't defeat Chen King alone then. The other Divine Realm Masters looked at each other. They had planned to rob Emperor King of the treasure he took, but now they realized that Emperor King was probably the most powerful one at the level of the Divine Realm. No one could force him to do anything unless they were at critical moments. Besides, they didn't know what the others were thinking about and had to give up the idea. Most importantly, the guy in that pit was mad now. Anyone who approached him would be killed. Boom, boom. A constant muffle came from below. It lasted about a minute, and the whole pit was further deepened by Chen King, thousands of kilometers, with his sword. He found nothing in it. "Stop doing that," Vern said. "The dead are gone and the world in that cave is finished. Zhang Han couldn't have survived that boat's attack. It's impossible." Chen King suddenly turned his head. His eyes were cold, but he didn't say anything to Vern. He flew out of the pit and then into the ice field. Where is he going? The other onlookers were confused. Vern thought about it and said, "I'll go to have a look." He began following Chen King. 3 of the other Divine Realm Masters followed Vern for about 10 minutes and came to a canyon. The pool had disappeared. "No, how can it be? No." Chen King looked at the calm snow surface sadly. After a minute, he looked up at the sky and roared. He waved the sword in his right hand. Boom, 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 boom. Chen King's attacks had continuously made deep holes on the ground here. 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. Until nearly several kilometers. Yet there was still no trace of the cave, as if the road he and Zhang Han had just covered disappeared. Vern and his fellows were moved. They hadn't experienced this kind of pure brotherhood in a long time. Looking at Emperor King, who had attacked the ground for half an hour, Vern sighed again. The relic world is extremely dangerous. Even if we have reached the Divine Realm, there are still too many crises. This world is not ordinary, and we are ordinary. With these words, Vern turned around and left quickly. He couldn't help sighing with emotion as when he got the strength of the Divine Realm, he had greater awe of heaven and earth. Chapter 675, Rascals. After Vern left, the other martial artists at the Divine Realm shook their heads. Even if some of them were at the same level as Emperor King, they didn't want to provoke a mad Emperor King. They were going to lose more than they received. Therefore, they waited for a few more minutes and then left. On the other side of the pit, the clansmen of the Ice Wolf clan left after Vern got back. Their destination was the core of the ice field. The other martial artists left the ice field in groups. They discussed it on the way. It's unbelievable that Master Ollie died. He was at the Divine Realm and more than 100 years old now. How could such an experienced martial artist be killed? I heard from 2 Divine Realm Masters of the Ice Wolf clan that it was so dangerous inside, that even 100 Divine Realm Masters couldn't be able to conquer it. At least half of them would be killed. They were lucky enough to get back. Yes, they escaped from there at a critical moment. It was frightening. Zhang Han, the young talent of Hua Nation, also died there. What a pity. I heard a few days ago that the martial arts world in China is divided into 2. To the south of the Yangtze River, Zhang Han dominates the world. To the north of the Yangtze River, there is Emperor King. They say that there is merciless Zhang in the south and Emperor King in the north, but I didn't expect that the 2 of them were friends. They were both cruel men and they must be powerful to be recognized by the world. Unfortunately, they were too arrogant and only the Emperor King escaped from there. He is very lucky, but it's a pity that Zhang Han died. He was just about to rise. Many people sighed repeatedly. They knew that since Zhang Han was able to serve as the peerless talent in Hua Nation, which was very prosperous in martial arts, he must be more powerful than they could imagine. The martial arts worlds in different countries and regions were different from each other, and there were even places where there was no martial arts world. Although Russia had a vast territory and abundant resources, it had only 3 worldlets. Relatively speaking, a stable worldlet was more important, which had rich spiritual chi and was suitable for cultivate. This was a basic element. As for the relics, they were the treasures of the whole world. Therefore, the local people might be hostile to Zhang Han and Emperor King, but they did stop them. This group of martial artists didn't talk much about One Eye and the other 4 men at the Divine Realm. They were strong enough but still far from being called talents. Zhang Han was different from them. Everyone knew that Zhang Han was a new star of the young generation, and it was a pity for him to be killed. Those who got closer to the surviving men at the Divine Realm got more detailed information. Wow, it's so dangerous. It's scary that there were so many ghosts there. I'm lucky that I decided not to follow you, or I would have been killed immediately like those 20 men at Grandmaster Peak. I didn't expect that the crisis level would be so high. Zhang Han and Emperor King are very powerful. One Eye was killed by Zhang Han, who was just searching for his own opportunities there. Was he killed by a boat when he was cultivating? The news was known by more and more people. It could be imagined that in a period of time after that, this matter would become a thing that the local martial arts worlds were talking about. Is he dead? No, it's impossible. It was getting dark. In the center of this ice and snow world, there was a deep pit, at the bottom of which stood Chen King, who was already powerless. Even in the most dangerous places, there is no hope of survival. Brother Han must be able to survive. With the knowledge he knows, he could surely find his way. Chen King tried to comfort himself, and then looked up at the sky. A dark cloud covered the sky. It was snowing heavily there, as if to set off Chen King's bad mood. Brother Han, I'll wait for you, Chen King whispered. Then he rose into the air and flew far away. He rushed to Orxa in full speed. After fighting all the way through the secret place, he vented his emotions and flew back as quickly as he could. Although Chen King was powerful, he still felt a little tired. He returned to the private plane and entered the cabin with the courtesy of 2 stewardesses. Chen King looked a little embarrassed, and his clothes were torn in some places, but he didn't care. Sitting on a chair, he closed his eyes and said slowly, "Go back to Hong Kong." Why? One of the hostesses was surprised and said, "Boss hasn't come back." They knew that Chen King was the boss's good brother, but the boss was not there and they didn't want to fly back inexplicably. They feared they would be blamed by their leader. They didn't know how to refuse Chen Chengqing, so they asked him with hesitation. "Brother Han, he is cultivating someplace, and he will be back in several days." Chen Chengqing tried to calm himself down, but his voice was still trembling. This. The two girls sensed his emotion, looked at each other and nodded. "Just a moment. Please, we'll tell the captain to arrange the flight." Chen Chengqing did not pay attention to them. He closed his eyes as if he were asleep, but his breathing was short and fast. 10 minutes later, ding! A stewardess's cell phone rang. She picked up the phone and connected it. After saying a few words, she hurried to Chen Chengqing from the door. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Chen, Mr. Zhao wants to talk to you." Chen Chengqing finally opened his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was pale. He slowly raised his hand and took the cell phone. "Brother King, I heard that you are coming back on the plane. Is my master cultivating there? When will he come back?" Chen Chengqing didn't know how to answer Zhao Feng's questions. There was a violent convulsion in his heart. He knew that if he told them that Brother Han was still in that secret place and he didn't know if he was dead, a large number of people would be in a state of emotional collapse. "Brother Han, you left me such trouble to solve. You'd better hurry out, or I won't be able to afford it." Chen Chengqing sighed and replied in a weak voice, "Yes, I'll be back first and wait for him." "Okay, Brother King, I've already contacted the people over there to arrange the flight for you as soon as possible. We'll talk about it when you come back." "Okay." Chen Chengqing did not have the interest to speak, so he directly handed the mobile phone to the stewardess. The stewardess went to the back, whispered a few words to Zhao Feng, and began to prepare for the voyage. 2 hours later, the plane took off and landed in Moscow just as it was when it came the first time. After a rest of an hour and a half, the plane took off again and headed for Hong Kong. This time, it took a long time. Chen Chengqing sat in the seat by the window and stopped the two stewardesses from disturbing him. He said in advance that he didn't need anything except for a good rest. It was quiet around. He closed his eyes and fell asleep for a while. In his sleep, he saw the mountain in the secret place again. He was flying backward while seeing the boat of curse rushing down. Suddenly, he seemed to see Brother Han's face. "Why didn't you save me?" Zhang Han said in his dream. "Ah!" Chen Chengqing suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils contracted and he had some cold sweat on his forehead. He gasped and looked out of the window in the dark. Alas! Chen Chengqing sighed heavily and leaned back on the chair, powerless. His mood could not subside for a long time. It made him despair. He knew that once lost in the ruins, Zhang Han had no hope of escaping, even if he would not be killed immediately. "What can I do?" Suddenly, he was afraid of going back to Hong Kong. He didn't know how to face Zif, Ziyan, Meng Meng, and Zhao Feng. What was he going to say? What should he say? Did he want others to follow him in despair? "No, I can't do that. Ha 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 ha." Chen Chengqing burst out laughing and then whispered with determination, "All the pressure and all the work should be borne by me, Chen Chengqing." Chen Chengqing was not the kind of person who did not accept reality. Since the current situation was so bad, it was up to him to bear all the responsibilities. After figuring out the matter, Chen Chengqing closed his eyes again after taking 2 pills. Then he began to practice all 8 drought demonic dragon, and wisps of light black mist swirled around his face. The morning arrived soon. At about 6 o'clock a.m., the plane arrived at the airport behind Meng Meng Group in Hong Kong. Squeak! The engine room door opened, and Chen Chengqing stepped down the stairs. A Rolls-Royce Phantom was parked nearby. Zhao Feng and Instructor Liu were leaning against the door, smoking. "Brother King, you are back." Zhao Feng snuffed out his cigarette and stepped forward with a smile. "Brother King, Brother King." Instructor Liu's eyes lit up. He ran towards Chen Chengqing and shouted, "Is our boss cultivating again? Will he become a god state strong as powerful as you when he comes back? He is better than me now." Chen Chengqing tried to remain calm and forced a smile. Then he calmly replied, You may not believe it, Brother Han's comprehensive strength is much stronger than me, and I'm just a little higher than him in terms of level. Ha, it seems that he will be at the same level as you. Instructor Liu smiled. Yes, Chen Qingqing nodded. Have you had breakfast yet, Brother King? Let's get in the car first and go to the restaurant on the mountain. After dinner, I'll go with Leng to send Mom and Meng Meng to the kindergarten, said Zhao Feng. Okay, let's go back first, Chen Qingqing replied. Normally, he would nod his head instead of speaking, but he answered all the others' questions today. Anyone familiar with him would find it strange. Yet, Zhao Feng and Instructor Liu didn't notice it. Instructor Liu was so excited now that his boss was going to make a breakthrough again. It only took them more than 10 minutes to get back to Mount New Moon from the company. When they approached the mountain, Chen Qingqing's face changed and his eyes turned cold. Even the windows were suddenly cracked by the cold air released by him. Zhao Feng and Instructor Liu were shocked, not knowing what happened. Under their gaze, Chen Qingqing said, "I'll kill you." His voice sounded indifferent. Whoosh! In an instant, they saw Chen Qingqing jump out of the window and fly to the seaside near Mount New Moon at a low altitude. Damn it, what's going on? Instructor Liu was stunned. Something's wrong, let's go. Zhang Feng's face changed as he accelerated the car and rushed towards the seaside. They were shocked by what they saw there. Gai Xingkong and Chen Qingqing were fighting with two other strong men in the distant sea. One of them, dressed in a black robe, was able to stir waves with a gesture, while the other was a man in a robe and a hat. He was Man in Bamboo Hat. Chen Qingqing was furious. He didn't expect that when he and Brother Han went out, there would be two such rascals coming. Originally, Gai Xingkong was under great pressure in the face of the two Divine Realm martial artists. He never expected that the strength of Man in Bamboo Hat had increased so much. It was hard for Gai Xingkong to deal with him alone, not to mention there was a black-robed man with a strong spiritual sense mind trick. Gai Xingkong didn't know who that man was, and he felt he was unable to win the battle against the two. Luckily, Gai Xingkong's Dragon Tiger Spear helped him hold on longer, though he was doomed to lose the battle. He had informed Wang, and the helper's arrival would reverse the tide. He didn't expect Emperor King to be back earlier than Wang. Gai Xingkong was surprised. They want to rob the treasures on the mountain. Let's kill him, especially Man in Bamboo Hat. Gai Xingkong rushed towards Man in Bamboo Hat with the Dragon Tiger Spear in his hand. Ha, Gai Xingkong, you are so weak now. Man in Bamboo Hat sneered and ran towards Gai Xingkong. A fierce battle began. Chen Qingqing's anger was only faced by the black-robed man alone. You are Emperor King? The man in black sneered. You are not qualified to fight with me, and you'd better return to your grandfather. Get out of the way. I will leave after I get the divine objects on the mountain, or you will die. Chen Qingqing burst out laughing. Ha, I must kill you rascals. While speaking, Chen Qingqing began to launch attacks. The king of all directions. Demonic dragon suppressing the soul. Bloody sky. Demonic dragon guarding all directions. He fell silent. Chen Qingqing was not stingy with his spiritual force and soul sense. He constantly used all kinds of unique skills to cooperate with all 8 drought demonic dragon, and made the most of the powerful secret skill that Zhang Han had taught him. The black-robed man retreated one step after another. Finally, his voice trembled as he shouted, "How could it be possible? Emperor King, you are also at this level. It's impossible, impossible." No, with Chen Qingqing's last move, the black-robed man said his last word in the world and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Huh? Man in Bamboo Hat turned around in surprise. He didn't expect that the black-robed man, who was at the God Realm medium stage, was killed within several moves by Emperor King, who was also at the God Realm medium stage. The young man is worth his fame. Thinking about it, Man in Bamboo Hat sneered again. Phew, I'll spare your life. The next time I come, there will be a river of blood here. When Chen Qing's huge sword and Ge Xingkong's shining dragon tiger spear were about to hit him, the figure of man in bamboo hat turned into a cloud of fog and slowly dissipated. He came and went freely, showing that he was much stronger than the last time. Ge Xingkong felt it difficult to deal with him. His way of escaping is even more bizarre, Ge Xingkong said and frowned. Chen Qingqing fell into silence. He didn't sense any energy of escaping method or magic with his soul sense, which showed that man in bamboo hat had exerted a high-end escaping method. It was big trouble. Luckily, you are back, or I would have been defeated by them. Ge Xingkong looked at Chen Qingqing in surprise. Then he smiled. I didn't expect you to be so strong now. Your moves scared me just now, they are so powerful. Chen Qingqing nodded his head and looked at the distant sea. Then he said in a faint voice, they are powerful indeed, and each of them is enough for a martial artist to be well known in the martial arts world. It was Brother Han who taught me all these skills. Really? Ge Xingkong smiled. It's a world of young people like you. I'll go to learn from Han when I have time. I'm sure he will teach you more powerful methods. Ge Xingkong smiled to himself. At the same time, he was murmuring silently, he will come back. Chapter 676. Was Zhang Han dead? They did not expect. On the east side of Mount New Moon several miles away, the figure of man in bamboo hat appeared slowly, as if it was a combination of dust. He just moved some distance horizontally instead of the opposite direction of Mount New Moon. His blood-red eyes were revealed under his huge straw hat. He looked at the location of the castle on the mountain and his voice was low and hoarse, like a monster. Blood, blood, blood. He fully felt that there were two strands of blood in the castle, one rich and the other thin and rare, and they gave him a stronger feeling than all of the people he had ever seen. For him, it was like a starving man seeing a table of delicious food. The blood had a great attraction to him, even surpassing the two divine objects behind the mountain. He also wanted a divine object, but he would undoubtedly choose blood if he could only choose one from the two. Blood was fundamental to improve his strength. Phew. Man in bamboo hat smiled. Gradually, a layer of light began to cover him. The original tattered straw hat and robe suddenly changed into the hat and black robe he wore before. If Zhang Han was here, he would quickly get a positive answer. This dark martial artist with a hat had already turned his hat into a divine weapon. 3 seconds later, man in bamboo hat disappeared. He had promised someone to get back 2 divine objects with that man in a black robe. Besides, he had planned to kill Ge Xingkong and absorbed Xian and Meng Meng's blood. He was confident in victory, but he didn't expect that Emperor King would suddenly appear and disrupt his plan. He was not a fool, on the contrary, he was clever enough to make his way to his present position. When he saw Emperor King, he knew Zhang Han might have come back with the support of the warlord of Chan clan and Wang, who were guarding Hong Kong. Emperor King, Ge Xingkong, Zhang Han, warlord of Chan clan, Wang, the 5 of them were all at the divine realm. What was more, the warlord of Chan clan and Wang were friends with so many forces and powerful martial artists, which was frightening. Man in bamboo hat had made a detailed plan, and he even gave up the 2 divine objects. All he wanted was the blood of Xian and Meng Meng, which would help to promote his strength. When man in bamboo was escaping as he had planned, Chen Qingqing was faced with a problem. Has Han come back from the mountain? Ge Xingkong asked curiously when he and Chen Qingqing went back to the shore. If Zhang Han had been there, man in bamboo hat would not have escaped so easily. Now that he had come there wearing a broken straw hat instead of his precious bamboo hat, Ge Xingkong thought that with Zhang Han's puzzling and strange moves, he might be able to kill man in bamboo hat. Well, Chen Qingqing was surprised at this sudden question. He adjusted his facial expression and replied, Brother Han was cultivating in the northern ice field. Ge Xingkong was surprised at the good news. Really? Great. Han will soon reach the level of the divine realm. He must be making a breakthrough, but I don't know if he can reach the divine realm this time. Brother Han had told me before that he would challenge his limits before he reached the Divine Realm stage. You know that Brother Han can make a breakthrough at any time as he lied. Chen Qingqing took a deep breath and said, yes, I knew it from his battle with you last time. He can make a breakthrough whenever he likes, but it's still important for him to reach the Divine Realm, and I'm glad to hear that he is patient enough to polish himself. You are right, Uncle Gay. I believed that I had made a perfect breakthrough before Brother Han taught me a lesson. Haha, there's a world of young people like you, and I'm not as powerful as you now. Stop joking, Uncle Gay. I'm still much weaker than Brother Han. Ha ha ha, you are right. He is a freak, and perhaps I will ask him for help. What Gay Xingkong referred to as Zhang Han's achievement in spear methods. There were so many weapons including sword, saber, halberd, spear, fork, etc. Gay Xingkong preferred spear. He was so excited that he couldn't fall asleep for 7 nights after he got a dragon tiger spear, the divine weapon. When they came back to the shore, they saw Zhao Feng and Instructor Liu looking at each other. Is he man in bamboo hat? Zhao Feng was confused. Yes, Gay Xingkong nodded and said, now that man in bamboo hat knew Zhang Han's address, he will come back again. Don't worry about the mountain, since I'll stay here to guard it. But Meng has to go to school and we must guarantee her safety. Luckily, Qingqing is back and he can safeguard Meng. Xiaofeng, tell the whole security group to be careful these days, and inform me whenever there is something strange. Zhao Feng nodded. Okay, Uncle Gay. I'm going to arrange it. Damn it, how dare man in bamboo hat challenge us in this way? I'll apply for a batch of heavy weapons. Oh, no, I'll apply for a batch of large weapons against the strong martial artists. If he dares to appear, we will shoot him immediately, Instructor Liu said. That kind of weapon of new technology was not very easy to borrow. Even his uncle might not be able to get them successfully. Eventually, he managed to get a number of new weapons with high legality, which could be used for covering attacks. Although these weapons had no threat to Divine Realm Masters, they were enough to scare Grand Masters. The army had always been a very powerful force, and martial artists at the Divine Realm, Earth Realm, or even Heaven Realm should be careful in the face of nuclear weapons. Once there was a country that used nuclear weapons to blow up a worldlet. Now, all martial artists knew how frightening nuclear weapons were. Nevertheless, no one would use nuclear weapons until the last resort. It was 7 o'clock in the afternoon when Chen Qingqing and Gay Xingkong went back to the mountain. Not knowing if Xian and Meng had woken up, Chen Qingqing sat on a chair on the side of the road and chatted with Gay Xingkong. They prepared to have breakfast with Meng. Xian didn't know how to cook, so they always went to the main restaurant for a meal after Zhang Han left. 10 minutes passed. At 7:30 a.m., Chen Qingqing dialed Zuf's number. He wanted to see Fei Fei and be comforted by her. Hello, who is it? Why do you call me so early? Zuf's lazy voice came from Chen Qingqing's mobile phone. When a woman just woke up, her lazy voice was charming. At least Chen Qingqing thought so. After hearing the voice, he chuckled and said, "It's me, I am back." Whoosh. Chen Qingqing clearly heard a sound. It was the sound of her sitting up. Hello, Qingqing, you are back. Where are you? I'm in the chair on the left side of your villa, Chen Qingqing replied. Wait for me. Zif lost her sleepiness completely. She hung up the phone and rushed to clean herself up. Though she was quick enough, it took her some time to dress. Eventually, she left the villa at 7:30 a.m. and ran towards Chen Qingqing happily. You two are back. Zif approached Chen Qingqing and gave him a pretty smile. Chen Qingqing heard the word too. Not the two of us, but myself. Chen Qingqing sighed. When he was about to say something, Gay Xingkong stood up and smiled. It's time for the young couple to have a talk. I'll go to the restaurant. See you later, Uncle Gay, Zif said and smiled. Then she sat down beside Chen Qingqing and smiled. Your skin turned white after several days. Is Russia so cold that you are frozen to snow white? I never feel cold. Chen Qingqing slightly shook his head. Which do you prefer, white, black, or tan? I like to see you darker than me. Your skin is smoother than mine and you are not as masculine as my brother-in-law. You'll be regarded as a star if I post your photos online. Ha. Chen Chengqing was amused and he felt better now, yet he was still depressed. Zif noticed him at this time. Sister Yan and Meng Meng are coming. Where is my brother-in-law? Buzz. Chen Chengqing's facial expression froze as he slowly turned around to face Ziyan and Meng Meng. He clearly saw the surprise in Ziyan's eyes. She looked around as if she were looking for her husband. When she found out that there was no one else there, she looked in the direction of the restaurant with some doubts. Is he preparing breakfast? It's impossible, or he would be in the dining hall on the third floor of the castle. If he came back, he would look at me gently by the bed and give me a good morning kiss. He must kiss Meng Meng. What happened? Ziyan turned her doubtful gaze at Chen Chengqing and she became nervous. Even her pace became slow, revealing her hesitance. Meng Meng didn't sense the strange atmosphere. As a simple girl, she looked at Chen Chengqing happily. Wow, Uncle King is back. Meng Meng's big eyes lit up. She ran towards Chen Chengqing and asked happily when he was still 5 meters away, Uncle King, where is my papa? Where is my papa? Clatter. Chen Chengqing's heart missed a beat. Looking at Meng Meng, who was waiting for his answer with expectation, he felt as if being cut by a knife from the inside. He tried to remain calm and smiled. Your father is dealing with his own business. He'll be back in several days. Why? Meng Meng was stunned and her mood fell down to the bottom. Why doesn't Papa come back? He has something urgent to do now. He said that when he comes back in a few days, he will make delicious food for Meng Meng and bring gifts for you. There are many more promises he made, Chen Chengqing said in a hurry. He never lied, but this time he made an exception. Ziyan seemed to notice something from Chen Chengqing's poor acting skills. She approached him and asked, He is still busy there? What is he doing? Chen Chengqing hesitated and hurried to give her a smile. Brother Han is busy and he can't feel the passage of time there. It will take him a few more days. I'm no longer needed there, so I've come back to inform you, otherwise, you'll worry about him. Ziyan still doubted Chen Chengqing's words. Though she didn't know the martial arts world well, she got nervous after Chen Chengqing came back. Meng Meng was sad now and about to burst into tears. Ziyan squatted down to comfort her. Meng Meng, Papa will come back in a few days, and he will bring you gifts and delicious foods. Let's wait for him. It's not the appointed time yet. You agreed that you should go to school obediently, and then he will come back before this Saturday. I don't want to go to school. I'll have a holiday today, Mama. If I have a holiday today, today will be Saturday. Meng Meng said unhappily. Well, it's not Saturday today. Yihan will soon be here, Zif said. Meng Meng, go to school as usual. When your father comes back, he will be very happy to see so many red flowers on the small blackboard. Zif's words worked. Meng Meng burst her lips after hearing this and said, Well, I'll go to school. Puff. Chen Chengqing sighed with relief. Anyway, he passed the first test. The second test is that on the day Zhang Han was scheduled to come back, Chen Chengqing felt nervous upon thinking about it. What can I do? Still, the second test did not wait until Saturday. On Wednesday morning, terrifying news came back from Russia. It was like a storm at level 18, which swept the whole martial arts world of Wudao world in China in an instant. Emperor King and Zhang Han, the talents of Hua Nation, suffered a lot in the A-level relic at the northern ice field of Russia. Chen Chengqing escaped, while Zhang Han, the new star, was killed. Kaboom! Everyone who got the news felt like they were hit by lightning and couldn't breathe for a moment. They asked in astonishment, Is it true? It's impossible. Zhang Han is so powerful. How could he be killed easily? It's probably hearsay, isn't it? The moral level of Russian martial artists is so low that they dare to make rumors about such things. If they annoy Zhang Han, he will let them know why he is called Merciless Zhang. In the beginning, 80% of martial artists didn't believe the news. As the exact news came back, they were all silent. It's true. The A-level ruins are extremely dangerous. As for Russia's side, 10 God State Strongs and 29 men at Grandmaster Peak were sent into it. Only 6 of them at the Divine Realm escaped, while all those at Grandmaster Peak were killed, after being confirmed by several masters such as Vern, the Ice Wolf King, that all the others, especially Zhang Han, had no chance of surviving. It was due to their good luck that Vern and Emperor King were alive. 2 satellite photos have just been sent out by Russian officials. The first one shows that deep hole at the entrance of the relic, and the later one, as well as those holes in the ice field, were made by Emperor King. He wanted to save Zhang Han's life, but he was unable to control an A-level relic. At first, people from the National Security Agency were also refuting the rumors, but when they heard the news coming back from there, everyone was silent. They didn't expect it to be true. For a time, the whole martial arts world of Wudao World in China was in a state of uproar. As the news spread faster and faster, it was heard by people all over the martial arts world of Wudao World in China in the morning. All the martial artists were discussing it. My gosh, Zhang Han died. I can never witness his advancing to the Divine Realm. A-level relic is so scary. 4 Divine Realm martial artists, including Zhang Han, and 29 men at Grandmaster Peak died in it. It's terrible. Perhaps it's all doomed. However excited these martial artists were, they were just onlookers. Those who were familiar with Zhang Han felt as if being struck by lightning after getting the news. Is the news confirmed? The warlord of Chan clan dialed Chen Chenking's number as soon as he got the news. Facing his grandfather, Chen Chenking said sadly in a low voice, I don't know, Brother Han may be still alive now, he was left in that relic. Chen Chenking's eyes turned red. This. The warlord of Chan clan's hand holding the phone trembled slightly as he hung up the phone. In his small yard, there was a heavy sigh. Staying in the remains was basically the same as declaring a death penalty. In the National Security Agency of Shangjing, Yi Danlang sat in his office and drank tea leisurely, which was rare to be seen. Yet, after hearing the news brought by Captain Azure Dragon, Captain White Tiger, and Captain Xuanhuan, Yi Danlang was stunned and then put his teacup on the table. Are you joking, eldest brother? It is true, I dare not joke with you. He died? Yi Danlang couldn't accept it for a moment. He narrowed his eyes in confusion and sighed after 5 seconds. What a pity. His facial expression didn't change greatly. He had seen so many dead talents and made no comment on their death. Still, he felt sorry for Zhang Han this time. Even those talents from worldlets, who were now cultivating in their own sects, got the news. What? Yi Longyuan got angry. He was still in that relic. Damn it, my golden armor. Relics appeared frequently, but they were not the same relics. That was to say, even if Zhang Han could survive there, he had no hope of coming out in his life. For those outside, it was like he was dead in the relic. Mugs didn't hate Zhang Han as much as Yi Longyuan. The demon dancing sword was not a necessity for her, and most of her divine weapons were in the Luofu sword sect worldlet. What annoyed her was the mark on her forehead. He provoked me. How could he die so easily? I wanted to kill him myself. The mark was still indicating that Zhang Han was still alive. Mugs guessed that the mark would disappear on the same day next month. Shi Fengyu smiled as usual. He said nothing. As for the other disciples, some of them were happy because Zhang Han had killed 2 of their brothers. Xiang Kishan, the chief of Mystical Fog sect, and the other sect forces, were all thinking about the news. They were just shocked by the A-level relic, and Zhang Han's death had nothing to do with them. There was another group of people who were very happy now. In a manor in the east of Shenzhen, there were more than 30 remaining members of the Hong Kong Li family with a history of 100 years. Their leader was the former martial master who was lucky to be spared by Zhang Han. They decided to hold a party and celebrate it as soon as they got the news. Let's celebrate, Zhang Han has died. There is divine justice after all. King Shan of the Hao family was as happy as the Li's. Zhang Han, since he became famous, liked to destroy his rival's whole clan, but there were still some who remained in the Li family and the He family. That was because Zhang Han was suppressed by some rules in the martial arts world. He was not strong enough to break all the rules. Finally, everyone in Hong Kong got the news. Zhang Han Yang was famous in Hong Kong and was regarded as the most powerful martial artist there. Wang was at the divine realm, but he was not as well known as Zhang Han. Therefore, the news detonated the whole martial arts world in Hong Kong. Chapter 677, The Crisis Was Coming. What did you say? Is it true? Jiang Yanlan was stunned by this news. She thought about Meng, that cute girl, and Ziyan. What if they get the news? Whoosh! Jiang Yanlan rushed out of the door as quickly as she could. Her residence was not far away from Meng group. Under the pedestrian's gaze, she kept running forward on the street. Is this girl lovelorn? She is running so fast, someone thought. In fact, she was just a little anxious. She ran all the way to Meng group. It was strange that none of the members of the security group, who usually patrolled around the buildings, were seen today. There were only two ordinary people who guarded the gate of the group. In the face of Jiang Yanlan who flew in, they opened their mouths widely, not knowing what to say. They wanted to remind her, run slowly and don't fall. Jiang Yanlan ignored them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Instead of running to the elevator, Jiang Yanlan went directly from the right staircase to the second floor, where there were usually many people practicing. Yet, the second floor was empty today. Jiang Yanlan's ears moved slightly as if she heard something. She went straight out to the third floor. The hall was silent, but there were hundreds of people in it. The atmosphere was oppressive. Everyone felt out of breath. At the front, Protector Leng, who had just come there from the National Security Agency, looked helpless. Beside Protector Leng was Zhao Feng with a pale face and red eyes. He was shaking and could not even speak, just like a mute. Instructor Liu, who was usually playful, almost burst into tears. Ahu, Xuyong, Elder Meng, Leng Yi, and the other members of the security group were trembling in sadness. There was a sense of sadness in the oppressive atmosphere. It's impossible. How could it be possible? It must not be true. Zhao Feng shouted. Zhao Feng looked fierce while staring at Protector Leng and asking him, "Are you cheating me? How can I make fun of it?" Protector Leng said with a wry smile, "I don't want to admit it, but the news has been spread. Ask Captain Jiang if you don't believe it." Whoosh! Instructor Liu came to Jiang Yanlan and put his hands on her shoulder. "Tell us it's fake, okay?" Boom! Jiang Yanlan didn't know how to answer him when she saw Instructor Liu's eyes. It was such a heavy topic. "I can only tell you that the news came out that way. Emperor King came from there and you'd better ask him about the specific situation." Jiang Yanlan answered helplessly. She didn't want to cheat them and make promises. In fact, she didn't know the specific situation at all. The only way for them was to ask Emperor King if it was true. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. All the security group members took action. They jumped out from the third floor instead of finding the stairs. The others were shocked by them. There were still a few pedestrians around. Under their astonishment, a large group of people got into a series of luxury cars. Buzz, squeak, in the roar of the engines and the sound of the tires rubbing on the ground, the cars quickly left the square and rushed frantically to Mount New Moon. Jiang Yanlan and Protector Leng were in the cars. They knew how anxious the group of people was. The motorcade formed a long line in front of Mount New Moon. On the surrounding roads, many members of the Wang family were running to the area behind the mountain. Whoosh! The motorcade stopped in the middle of the road on one side of the restaurant. Ahu quickly got out of the car and asked, "Where is Emperor King?" "Behind the mountain." A young man from the Wang family said and then ran away. He was so busy that he couldn't stop to chat with Ahu. Ahu and the others usually called Chen King Brother King. he said Emperor King just now because he was so nervous and paid no attention to his words. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 100 people, including Ahu and Zhaofeng, rushed behind the mountain. From the perspective of a third person, they seemed to be going to a group fight. It was not. They quickly ran to the area behind the mountain and saw more than 20 Wangs gather together. In the center stood Chen Chengqing and Gai Xingkong. Everyone was looking at Chen Chengqing, whose facial expression was stiff. The members of the security group surrounded the Wangs. Brother King, what happened? Is the news that has been spread true? Zhao Feng rushed towards Chen Chengqing to ask him. Chengqing, Gai Xingkong said slowly and seriously, tell them the truth. Gai Xingkong also looked depressed. Not long ago, Chen Chengqing told Gai Xingkong the truth under his questioning. The pressure on him was not from Gai Xingkong, but from the outside world. Chen Chengqing was also a little confused, so he told Gai Xingkong what had happened in that relic under repeated inquiries of Gai Xingkong. Chen Chengqing felt much more relaxed after telling the truth. Besides, Gai Xingkong was there to share the pressure with him. They had discussed it before the others came. They believed that Zhang Han would come back. Gai Xingkong put more hope on Zhang Xuanhuan, the owner of the Heavenly Knights sect, who was said to have supernatural powers. According to the relic described by Chen Chengqing, perhaps Zhang Xuanhuan had a way to save Zhang Han. Therefore, Chen Chengqing gave Zhao Feng a positive reply. Nonsense. What they sent was false news. What I saw and heard on the spot was the truest. Brother Han was cultivating at that time, and he will come back after making a breakthrough. Do your daily routines as usual and don't panic. Though Brother Han has encountered big trouble, both Uncle Gai and I believe that he can solve the problem. Xiaofeng has already told you that we may have to face a very fierce enemy recently. Though Brother Han is not here, I will help you to protect the Cold Immortal School even at the cost of my life. I don't want to see anyone betray the Cold Immortal School. You can leave the Cold Immortal School now in order not to involve your family in it, but you should keep everything about our school a secret. What Chen Chengqing referred to were all the divine objects and holy objects on the mountain. Zhang Han was envied by many other martial artists because of these. The news of the treasures would bring them trouble at this critical moment. Security Group. Instructor Liu looked so serious as he took 2 steps forward. Then he looked directly at Chen Chengqing and said loudly and clearly, there is no coward. He was very confident that the usual communication had already made the security group feel like a family. Hearing his words, hundreds of security group members all roared, there is no coward in the security group. This scene shocked Jiang Yanlan. She couldn't imagine what made the security group so united. Well, let's disband first. Gai Xingkong waved his hand and said, don't bother Xian with this matter, just tell them Zhang Han is cultivating if they ask you. He felt depressed. The gate of the worldlet was about to open. He planned to go to the Heavenly Knights sect as soon as possible to ask Zhang Xuanhuan for help through Zhang Guangyu. Zhang Xuanhuan, the owner of the Heavenly Knights sect, was likely to get Zhang Han back. Still, the probability of success was too low, not to mention that no one knew where either the disappearing relic or Zhang Xuanhuan was. I hope Guangyu can do something about it. Gai Xingkong sighed. The mood of the security group members improved a little. They didn't say anything and went back to the motorcade in silence. Zhao Feng and others also left. In fact, they were extremely depressed. Though it sounded hopeful, they all knew that their boss was in great danger according to the news. Behind them, Rong Jiaxin suffered an emotional breakdown. She burst into tears while looking at Gai Xingkong. Tell me, is there any hope that Han will come back? What is the probability? I want the truth. Yes, Brother Gai and Chengqing, tell us the truth. Anyway, we should face it together. Wang Ming sighed. How could it be so? Wang Zanping was confused. Wang Zanzong and Wang Zanhong were also depressed and nervous. This. Gai Xingkong hesitated for a moment, sighed again, and said, there is a chance. Anyway, when the gate of the worldlet is open, I will go to the Heavenly Knights sect to ask Zhang Wang for help. Zhang Han will come back safely if he promises to help us. What? Wang Jiaxin trembled. Has the situation become this bad? Gai Xingkong didn't know what to say. How can I rely on her? Tell her that it is worse than she imagines? Shan Wangzhang said, Auntie, don't worry, I know the situation of Brother Han best. He was cultivating at that time, and there was a kind of strong energy around his body. I couldn't even get close to the edge of the area. His safety was guaranteed. Shan Wangzhang did not dare to tell them about the boat of curse, because they all knew how strange that boat was. The situation was bad enough, and it would make them more worried. Shan Wangzhang didn't know whether the Russian martial artists would talk about that boat, but he decided to play to the score tactfully. Hearing the words of Gai Xingkong and Shan Wangzhang, Wang Jiaxin didn't feel better. She was still worried. What about Xian and Meng? I'll try my best to keep them from the truth, Gai Xingkong replied helplessly. In fact, such a big thing couldn't be concealed. 10 minutes before, Xian and Zuf were in the office, looking at the letters of intent. Recently, they were not planning to accept long-term cooperation, and all the letters of intent were about invitations to various programs and some cooperation in songs. Rat-a-tat. There was a knock on the door. Come in, Zuf said without raising his head. It was not until the man came in that she finished an invitation in her hand, put it on the table, looked up to the front, and found it was the department manager. What's the matter? Asked Zuf. Just now, the members of the security group jumped down from the 3rd floor and drove away, as if there was something urgent. Now everyone is talking about it. They have been seen by many people and may be reported by the media. Shall I prepare to deal with it in advance? Asked the manager. Huh? Zif was confused. She didn't understand him for a while. Xian suddenly raised her head and asked, which direction are they going? East. East? That should be the direction of the mountain. Xian was confused. All the members of the security group were out and jumped down from the 3rd floor. What happened there? Zif thought about it and then told the department manager, pay attention to this matter first, and deal with it as soon as possible if there is any impact. Okay. The department manager was very capable and left in a hurry. Xian got nervous. Zif was also very curious, so she dialed Chen Chengqing's number and asked him, what happened on the mountain? She did not get any effective information from Chen Chengqing. Before Zif's phone call was finished, Xian's phone rang. It was Hong Kitao. Uncle Hong, what can I do for you at this time? Is that story true? Hong Kitao was not sure. Was what true? Ah, well, nothing. I just heard some rumors and I'll go and inquire about them again. I'll communicate with you later. See you. Hong Kitao was surprised and quickly finished the phone call. Clatter. Xian's heart missed a beat. She was in a panic. Hong Kitao called her on the phone, which showed that he got some accurate information. Perhaps. Thinking of Chen Chengqing's return, she suddenly had a bad feeling. Let's go back. Xian stood up. Zif also felt something strange. They ran quickly to the elevator and drove to Mount New Moon. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, they saw Zhao Feng, who was just about to get in the car. They all looked at the Bugatti that Zif drove. It was easy for Zif and Xian to sense their depression. Xiao Feng, what happened? Asked Xian when Zif stopped beside Zhao Feng and rolled down the window. Nothing, Zhao Feng replied. Brother King and Uncle Gai called us here to make some arrangements. Where are they? Behind the mountain. After chatting with Zhao Feng, Zif drove to the mountain. Looking at the back of the car, Zhao Feng covered his forehead with his hand. What can we do? During this period, Zhao Feng received several phone calls from Liu Qingfeng, Patriarch Luo, Patriarch Chu, and so on. Up to now, many people had been focusing on Zhang Han's safety, because sometimes, the life and death of a strong person would affect the pattern greatly. Zhao Feng was not in the mood to answer Zif's question, and he just gave her a simple reply. Jiwash Wang, Mo Chengfeng, and Ltanan were all at the back mountain. When they saw Xian and Zuf, they all fell into silence. Xian trembled slightly when she saw the Wangs and Gai Xingkong here. She was out of breath. She approached them slowly. She didn't know exactly what the matter was, but according to Hong Kitao's tone, the unusual action of the security group just now, and the crowd here, she knew that it was definitely not good news. She asked, "Is it true?" Buzz. Chen Qingqing's expression froze, and Gai Xingkong didn't know what to say. She knew it. Who told her about it? Why did she get the news so fast? Why did they tell her the news? Why did they trouble her with the news? However confused and angry Chen Qingqing was, he had to take the initiative and explain to Xian, "Sister-in-law, the situation is not as bad as they say. Brother Han will come back. Uncle Gai has just said that when the gate of the world lit opens, he will ask Jiang Shenwang for help. Then Brother Han will be saved." Boom. Xian felt as if being struck by lightning. She staggered, nearly fell to the ground. Rong Jiaxin on the other side helped her up. Zif opened her eyes widely in disbelief. She never expected her brother-in-law to be in danger. What exactly is it? What's going on? Where's my brother-in-law? What's the matter with him? Zif unconsciously and forcefully grasped Chen Qingqing's arm with both hands. He is still in the relic. There was an accident when he was cultivating, and Brother Han didn't come out. We have no choice but to wait for Jiang Shenwang, Chen Qingqing replied. Ah? Zif turned pale. Xian fell onto the ground with both eyes closed and fainted. Everyone came to help her. They knew Xian was too sad to remain conscious. Rong Jiaxin took Xian back to the castle, but she screamed before she reached the gate, "Help!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone present rushed to them. "Her body is very hot," Rong Jiaxin said. "What's the matter? She has a high fever?" Wang Zanping took out 2 pills and handed them to Rong Jiaxin. Rong Jiaxin fed Xian with the pills, but they were all astonished to find that the pills didn't work. Gai Xingkong gave her another 2 pills. They still didn't work. The pills didn't work. Everyone was shocked and nervous. Luckily, Xian's condition did not get worse after a while. It looked like a serious illness. Rong Jiaxin took Xian back to her bedroom on the 3rd floor and took care of her. Xian didn't wake up until the afternoon, when she heard Meng Meng's words. Xian's eyelashes trembled and she slowly opened her eyes, yet, there was no luster in her eyes as she forced a smile at Meng Meng. Meng Meng was shocked and almost burst into tears. "Mama, why are you sick?" Rong Jiaxin looked at Xian's red and swollen eyes because she secretly cried, and felt very uncomfortable. Everyone familiar with Zhang Han suffered a lot on the day they got the news. The next day, Chen Qingqing sent Meng Meng to kindergarten. Chen Qingqing guarded the kindergarten all day, and Gai Xingkong guarded the cold immortal school. They had been preparing to fight against Man in Bamboo Hat. They were both God-state strong and no one dared to provoke them. On this afternoon, the news that came from the west gradually broke away from the control of Chen Qingqing and Gai Xingkong. There are 2 kinds of divine objects, many holy objects, and countless heaven-grade treasures on Mount New Moon, which belonged to Zhang Han Yang, the Western Devil Man in Bamboo Hat, together with the ancient Stephen family of the Blood Clan, Landry, a divine realm master, the crazy sect led by Oshari, and the Red Mountain Society where Parker was from, intended to join hands to go to Hong Kong and destroy Mount New Moon. The news that came from the West shocked many people. They knew that Emperor King and Gai Xingkong might not be able to defeat so many forces. On the other hand, they were shocked that Zhang Han Yang had so many treasures, 2 divine objects and many holy objects. Just 1 divine object was enough for ordinary martial artists to promote themselves to a much higher level. Another piece of news from Hong Kong ignited the martial arts world. The warlord of Chan Clan got on a flight to Hong Kong at 10 a.m. Several Grandmaster Strongs of the Gai family left for Hong Kong at 10:30 a.m. Wang said he will kill all the robbers from the west if they dared to do something evil in Hong Kong. All the martial artists were stunned by this series of news. Is there another war between the East and the West? Chapter 678. Here they are. The Wu Dao world in China was invincible over the whole martial arts world. About 100 years ago, the most tragic battle in history took place in the Eastern and Western worlds. At the very start, it was only a conflict in the worldly martial arts world. Yet, as both sides kept contacting their helpers, the detached sects and powerful sects from the world, it gradually emerged in succession. Those at Grandmaster peak were just hardcore members, and the martial artists at the Divine Realm stage became ordinary, while the people at the Earth Realm also showed up. The two sides beat to a frazzle in that world-shaking battle. The uninhabited region of the South Sea, as the main battlefield, witnessed countless casualties. The later generation considered that war as the Battle of Era. The Chinese martial artists killed their enemies at the expense of great injuries and deaths, leading to a 100-year countermarch of the Wu Dao world in China. As for those Western countries involved, they were pushed back for at least 70 years. Now, they did not expect that history would repeat itself after 100 years. The gate of the small world was about to open. Similarly, the dispute of the martial arts world was about to begin on a large scale. The people of the secular world shared a complicated relationship with the seats of the worldlet. Some people speculated that another war of the new era would break out if they kept holding fire. Damn it. Instructor Liu cursed in a rage after hanging up the phone. How's it going? Did he refuse to your proposal? Ahu, among the more than a dozen members of the security group standing next to him, asked in a hurry. No, he didn't. Instructor Liu put on a ferocious expression. Bomb any invaders, fuck. The number 10 army group should set off now. Mount New Moon must be impregnable. Great. Ahu burst into laughter and said, they'll suffer the formidable force of the cannon. Considering that the war would be great chaos, Instructor Liu was worried that something would go wrong on the mountain. For the sake of absolute security, he begged his uncle. Generally speaking, the army was not allowed to be deployed. Fortunately, Zhang Han was titled as general, so Instructor Liu eventually mobilized the well-known number 10 army group. In the face of such army groups, even 10 martial artists at the Divine Realm stage would be bombarded into pieces. His uncle, however, also reminded him to maintain vigilance, because the army might be forced to withdraw under the pressure of the external world. After hearing that, Instructor Liu promised that the battle would come to an end in 3 days. Since they had received exact information that the Western Alliance had been mustering helpers, he deemed that the enemies would come on Friday, no later than Saturday. Therefore, 3 days was enough. It was a great idea, but unfortunately, the case was more serious than leading Cardinal Liu had expected. Dairyuo country of the Western world has dispatched 10 aircraft carriers, directly aiming at the South Sea. The news quickly spread one after another in succession. The government started an urgent and intense negotiation that lasted for 5 hours. Finally, they reached an agreement that the martial arts world should solve the cases themselves, and other departments were not allowed to intervene. Therefore, the number 10 army group retreated, which annoyed Instructor Liu. Fortunately, he obtained a batch of high-tech weapons and gave them to those heaven stage masters in the security group. Time was limited, and only the group of people brought by Instructor Liu at the time could employ them. Over the course of the day, the news spread all over the Wu Dao world in China. Reactions appeared mixed. Divine objects? I didn't expect that Zhang Han possessed 2 divine objects. My God, those who own one are capable of establishing a new sect. I never thought that he would have 2. In addition to 2 divine objects, he owns various holy objects and countless heaven-grade treasures. Mount New Moon in the possession of Zhang Han is simply a place where treasures gather. The Westerners gathered so many troops for the purpose of looting divine objects. Damn it, the divine objects should belong to the Wu Dao world in China since Zhang Han is dead. How can others grab them? They looked at each other in silence. Suddenly, the divine objects became much more attractive to them. A majority of them were impressed by the divine objects. In fact, they did not dare to covet these treasures as they heard the news and found that there were so many martial artists at the divine realm stage protecting them. Still, with the news of many Western families and martial artists at the divine realm stage spreading, they were ready to make trouble. In the courtyard of Shi Fenghu's sect, more than a dozen martial artists of Wind Snow School, who were in the same state as the two people killed by Zhang Han in Shangjing, looked old but their hearts were leaping with youth. Leaving the two divine objects aside, we can't tolerate Zhang Han Yang killing two of our junior brothers. Even if Emperor King and other masters help him, Zhang Han Yang's force is about to collapse. It's an irreversible trend. Moreover, this is not a battle between the Wu Dao world in China and the Western world, but one involves all of Zhang Han Yang's enemies. They define themselves as Zhang Han Yang's enemies because of the general trend, considering that the foreign enemies were really powerful. They wanted to have a finger in the pie as well. In fact, it was reasonable for them to do so without being criticized by others, and the Wind Snow School did not need to explain to others before taking action by the right of their powerful strength. We'd better go to consult with Fenghu about this matter. So, a dozen or so people rushed to the back hill. When they arrived at the place where Shi Fenghu meditated in seclusion, they received a cold response. What am I going to do without Zhang Han? Regardless of Shi Fenghu's thought, those people booked their tickets and set off for Hong Kong that night. Actually, they did not see Shi Fenghu putting on a conflicted expression. The two divine objects were also attractive to him, but he had his own pride. Although they were tempting, he disdained to take advantage of loopholes in the face of powerful enemies. Yilong Yuan and Mugs shared the same thought, refusing to go there after learning of the situation. Nevertheless, many other people insisted on taking a share. Did pride and arrogance make sense? Outside the Xiang Kishan's main hall of the mystical fog sect in Xiang City stood 10 Grand Masters and dozens of Heaven Stage Masters. They were all waiting for the chief Xiang Kishan in the room. When Xiang Kishan learned the news, he sat alone in the room, with his legs crossed. 2 hours later, he suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with determination and resolution. He stood up calmly and slowly walked out of the room, then sat on the old-fashioned wooden armchair. After glancing at the disciples of the sect, he said in a low voice, Zhang Han Yang killing Master Mishashi and the rest of his clan is the cause. Now, he's dead in the northern icy plains, leaving behind 2 divine objects and other treasures. In the face of powerful Western opponents, they won't be able to hold on. His treasures have belonged to the world, so we're qualified to fight for them. This is the effect. Every one of the mystical fog sect, go to Hong Kong with me tonight to fight for our opportunities. Yes, sir. Feeling both nervous and excited, everyone in the room roared. They knew that he did not need to fight against God-state strongs, such as Emperor King and the warlord of Chan clan, but prepared to compete with those they were capable of defeating. Furthermore, in the face of powerful Western enemies, Emperor King and his companions would get into trouble and might not be able to figure out what was going on. In addition, as a well-known saying goes, everyone gives a shove to a falling wall. The battle for the treasures on Mount New Moon was about to ravage the mountain. Moreover, they had a chance to obtain a large number of holy objects on the mountain even if the divine objects were grabbed by others. Apart from holy objects, there were various heaven-grade treasures. Those treasures were attractive enough for many people to take action. The members of the Li family and the He family in Shenzhen went to Hong Kong as soon as possible in a high-profile manner. How could Zhang Han Yang, a dead person, suppress us? They did not merely chase after treasures, because they were aware that they were not qualified to acquire divine objects. Perhaps they might be able to compete for holy objects. Meanwhile, in the remote mountains of the Central Plains, there was a Xanadu with beautiful scenery, where water flowed beneath a small bridge. Also, all the waterfalls flowed around a sect. At the very front was a huge square, on which laid a variety of stalls. It looked like a snack street from afar. Heavenly Elixir Sect. This was the Heavenly Elixir Sect, and that square was where the annual medicinal pellet auction of the sect was held. Many people in the martial arts world were familiar with the Heavenly Elixir Sect, for they all came here to buy medicinal pellets. It was a sect mainly for refining elixirs, with less than 100 disciples in total who focused on refining elixirs in ordinary times. They were intimately connected with the outside world, so they learned the news of the divine objects and holy objects at once. The leader of the Heavenly Elixir Sect, with a long beard, was dressed in an azure robe that contained the aura of an immortal. Still, his triangular eyes left a cunning expression on others. He walked out of the sect, looked at the dozen people in front of him, and said, "Let's go, contact Emperor King in advance and ask him to hand over a divine object since Zhang Han killed the senior masters of the Heavenly Elixir Sect. If not, our Heavenly Elixir Sect will take corresponding measures." After that, he moved and took the lead to go down the mountain. The head of the Heavenly Elixir Sect was also a martial artist at the Divine Realm stage. He deemed that he would have got more kicks than halfpence if they dunned for treasures when Zhang Han was alive. In view of Zhang Han's nature, his action would have backfired, yet now, these two divine objects were too appealing. The sect head could not help but bring his men there in person. There were still some masters as powerful as him. Under such a circumstance, the martial arts world of Hong Kong apprehended danger in every sound. Some martial artists had to be watchful and reverent in recent days because they regarded everyone as a foreign master. At 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday, Chen Qingqing sat on the roof of Meng Meng's classroom and looked toward the horizon in the distance with depression, taking puffs constantly. Whoosh! All of a sudden, a figure quickly rushed over him. It was not Luke's son, but Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng said in a deep voice with anger, "Brother King, I've just learned the news that the head of the Heavenly Elixir Sect asked us to take out a divine object to offset my master's crime of killing their senior masters, otherwise, they'll hit us when we're down." Coldness climbed up Chen Qingqing's eyes. "Where are they?" "They haven't arrived in Hong Kong, but I heard that they've already set off from the sect and may arrive this afternoon." Zhao Feng's expression changed. "They're the third group, Humphrey." Chen Qingqing snorted and said, "They are a group of cowards who only dare to have empty talk." Chen Qingqing knew that this group of people planned to make trouble in the rear when the strong Western enemies fought against them. They, however, actually did not dare to face them. He intended to destroy one or two forces to boost morale, but they did not open a gate to him, which annoyed Chen Qingqing greatly. He had no alternative, leading to greater pressure. In particular, Xian was in a terrible state recently, being in a coma from time to time. However, she always got up steam every day when Meng Meng went to school and took her to school in person. When Meng Meng was about to come home, she also sat to wait with great difficulty. She was in a coma during the day and lost all desire for food and drink, which made other people anxious. Everyone was aware that she cried every day. Rong Jiaxin and the others shared the same feeling. Since their backbone had an accident, they were all in a mess. Fortunately, the warlord of Chan Clan and Gai Xingkong still assumed personal command there. Time slowly passed. At 7 o'clock the next morning, Meng Meng opened her eyes beside Xian. The little girl woke up. Meng Meng was stunned, rubbed her eyes in a daze, and opened them again. "Where's Papa?" Then she pushed Xian's shoulder gently with both hands and said, "Mama, Mama, will Papa come back today?" "He's not here, Mama." Hearing Meng Meng's voice, Xian slowly opened her eyes, feeling somewhat tired. Her eyes were suffused with sadness, and she said in a hoarse voice, "Your Papa may return before nightfall." Meng Meng became upset all of a sudden, sitting on the bed with her mouth pouted at a loss. At this moment, the door opened, and Rong Jiaxin, who was sleeping next door, rushed over on hearing Meng Meng's words. "Get up, Meng Meng, come on, I'll take you to wash your face. Since your mother is sick, you should be obedient." Rong Jiaxin sighed inwardly as she looked at Xian and walked up to Meng Meng. Meng Meng's watery eyes were filled with tears as she heard what Rong Jiaxin said. Mama, why are you sick? Mama, please recover quickly. Why hasn't Papa come back yet? She burst out crying again. Rong Jiaxin coaxed her in a hurry. Yet, whatever she did, Meng Meng still kept crying until Xian struggled to sit up and held Meng Meng in her arms. In her mother's arms, listening to her soft tone, Meng Meng stopped crying. Nonetheless, Rong Jiaxin felt somewhat surprised and bewildered at this point. She saw something weird when Xian sat up and stretched out her arms to Meng Meng. A small piece of her pajamas was lifted and Xian's slender waist was exposed. There seemed to be a flash of light that appeared in the position of her dantian, like the crescent moon hanging in the sky, leaving a mysterious impression. What was it? Rong Jiaxin's eyes narrowed and she approached Xian to touch her pajamas. After raising it, she did not find the shining mark but Xian's smooth skin. Did I misread it? Rong Jiaxin was a little confused. She could not figure out what was going on and guessed it might be the result of the inefficacy of the medicinal pellet Xian had taken before. Xian's state and Meng Meng, who had just stopped crying, were the priority. She helped coax Meng Meng as well and eventually supported Xian to wash up with the little girl. When they had breakfast, Xian just ate a little bit porridge as usual. She was so sad that whoever saw her felt sorry for her. It was not until noon that Xian got better. She sat on the back hill, staring at Meng Meng, who was sitting in the pet area. Meng Meng was depressed, and Dai and Little Hai also stopped barking. They seemed to have discovered something strange. The atmosphere of Mount New Moon changed. Xian, who was in a better state, received a phone call from her father, Ziqiang. He had already learned the news. Xian covered her mouth with her hand and burst into tears, almost fainting. Ziqiang, Xixiniu, martial artists of the Ziclan, including Zilong and Zihu, came over in the evening. Meng Meng began to cry again. Didn't Papa promise to return today? Why hasn't he come back yet? It seems that Zhang Han sensed their sadness and two beams of light suddenly appeared in a dark space. Buzz! They were radiated by Zhang Han's eyes. Whoosh! He moved and stood up as soon as possible, spreading a huge amount of spiritual sense energy in all directions. It reached a range of 1 li, 2 li, 30 li. He soon discovered something. 29 li to the front right appeared a boat of curse, which was swallowing a bulk of gloomy energy, and a densely packed pile of bones laid in front of the boat. The dark abyss, the dark world? Zhang Han's eyes narrowed, and he said, this is likely to be one of the 3 Deadlands, the Indonesian Bone Cave. The Dark World always appears on a large scale in the north of Russia where ice covers. The Dark Abyss was smashed by this ship, becoming a true worldlet. However, by right of its speed, I came to the Deadland, Bone Cave. I'm so lucky to be here, or I've been in trouble if I had stayed in the ruins. Time is limited, and I need to return as soon as possible. Zhang Han looked at the boat of curse from afar. Now that it could hit the land of the Thunder Spirit, it was obvious that it was not formed by simple curses. I'll personally expose your disguise once I reach the innateness stage. After saying that, Zhang Han moved in another direction. Facing the danger of the Bone Cave, which was known as one of the Deadlands, he began to move quickly and ignored all the treasures he encountered. He was indeed in a Deadland and the treasures were beset with crises. Xian and Meng Meng were the only 2 who could ask Zhang Han to give up. Saturday was a smooth day. Many Western experts, however, did not come over. It seemingly quieted down all of a sudden. There was no news about them. As for a few martial artists in Hua Nation, containing the disciples of the mystical fog sect, the heavenly elixir sect, and other forces, were ready to take action and failed to hold back anymore. They did not dare to face Emperor King and other experts, for they would be wiped out by these people at the Divine Realm stage if they were careless. On this day, many people suddenly found that all the roads from the east of New Moon Bay to the Eastern District were blocked, in the name of road construction. Nobody knew which part of the road was going to be repaired. In addition, there were plenty of official ships on the sea. Within the scope of a vast sea area, it was a vacuum. Both fishermen and commercial ships were required to detour. Yet the martial arts world was still in peace. Sunday had passed, and Xian was in a better state. While Meng Meng usually cried, she refused to go to school on Monday, insisting on waiting for her papa. Tuesday and Wednesday had passed. It was Saturday again. Ziqiang, Xixiniu, and others also realized that things went badly, feeling really upset. Boom! The sky was overcast with dark clouds, and a thick bolt of lightning stretched far from Mount New Moon to the sea in the south on Saturday. The dim sky was lit up at this moment. Many ships slowly approached from afar in a trance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Less than 10 minutes later, Chen Chengqing, the warlord of Chan clan, Gai Xingkong, Zhuosh Wang, Jiang Yanlan, Ltanan, Ziqiang, Zihu, Wang Zanping, Zhao Feng and other people gathered at the edge of the cliff in the south. Every one of the group took on a serious expression because Chen Chengqing had already seen a group of people standing on top of the largest ship, led by the man in bamboo hat. They're coming. Here they are. Chapter 679. The battle reaches the boiling point. It was at noon, but Mount New Moon was covered with darkness. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled at this moment. The group of cruise ships on the sea not far away looked a little bit odd. It seemed that even God had already perceived that today was not a normal day and vented his feelings through the dark clouds. It started to shower, and the heavy rain stopped the majority of people from walking on the street. As for the pedestrians, some ran madly in the rain with umbrellas since they had something urgent to do. Others basically took shelter from the rain in various places. On the beach not far away from the area of Mount New Moon, which was blocked by the government, many people were observing enemies with binoculars. Hiss! Here they are, here they are. Be quick to report the news to superiors. These people made phone calls in succession to make reports to their superiors. The man in bamboo hat, leading the army of Western martial artists, is about to attack us. The news shocked plenty of people. Many people hiding in the southern district of Shenzhen, such as more than a dozen disciples of the Wind Snow School, people harboring evil intentions of the mystical fog sect, of the heavenly elixir sect and so on, were all astonished. Let's go. As soon as Xiang Qishan gave the order, everyone got on Hummers one after another. These cars quickly headed for Hong Kong on this rainy day. Looking at the dragon-like motorcade on the road, Xiang Qishan sneered and said, "We seemingly have a lot of competitors. There might be more forces coveting the divine objects." Actually, every force of the entire martial arts world was eager for divine objects. Even if they had already possessed divine objects, they would never be satisfied. Yet, only 10 or so forces took action. The number was much smaller than he had imagined. How did it happen? They felt afraid. Emperor King, the warlord of Chan clan, Gai Xingkong, each of the 3 people at the Divine Realm stage who were absolutely close to Zhang Han were famous. They were content with things as they were and were not in crisis currently. If they fought for the treasures, they would have to suffer the wrath from Emperor King and other experts if they took them. It was not worth doing that. As for the forces that chose to take action, they were basically associated with the sects in the world-lit. Martial artists at the Divine Realm stage were not dreadful in the world-lit, so Emperor King and the others did not clamp down on them. Certainly, some of them, like Xiang Qishan, insisted on sharing a piece of the pie. Anyway, the first priority was to take the divine objects. Furthermore, Emperor King and other masters would probably die today. Xiang Qishan had heard of all the formidable experts united by the men in bamboo hat. Thus, Xiang Qishan was convinced that it would be a productive trip. Even if some unexpected things happened, he could escape unscathed. Shenzhen was very close to Hong Kong. At the time when it was raining heavily, only a few cars were on the road. Therefore, they drove at a high speed, arriving at New Moon Bay in less than an hour. Seeing the cars driving behind Mount New Moon, Xiang Qishan could not help but sneer. It seems that Mount New Moon is between the hammer and the anvil. We don't need to follow them but head for the beach. So this group of people came to the beach, which was regarded as a tourist attraction, in driving rain. The huge waves were whipped up, rolling up and down, as if the sea was venting its anger. Bang, bang, bang. They got out of the car and walked on the beach. The Grandmasters present all cast their spiritual force shields to ward off the rain. It's been an hour, why haven't they fought yet? Xiangqishan looked at the cruise ships in the distance. He was somewhat amazed, for he had thought that he would have witnessed a world-shaking battle here. He could imagine that Mount New Moon would be secure against assault, so he was prepared to take action according to the development of the battle. Once Emperor King and his men were defeated, he would enter the front-line battlefield. On the contrary, if they won the battle, he would choose to retreat. He, however, believed that the man in bamboo hat who made full preparations would have an 80% winning percentage. Let's go forward. Xiangqishan and his men slowly approached the beach beside Mount New Moon and hid in the jungle nearby. He also caught sight of lots of people around. In addition to disciples of sects, there were some people from other forces, who might take responsibility for investigating. The cruise ships sailed relatively slowly, yet they still brought overwhelming momentum. Chen Qingqing and his companions looked serious. They, however, did not move but stood still for an hour, preparing to meet the man in bamboo hat and his men as they entered a certain range. Only at the optimal distance could they march forward and retreat freely. In the meantime, the tea hall on the 5th floor of the castle on Mount New Moon, where Zhang Han's family seldom visited, was full of people at this point. In general, Zhang Han and his family went to the restaurant opposite. Liu Qingfeng, Liu Jiren, Ziqiang, Wang Ya, and others were all there. The heavy rain outside the window obscured their eyes. Fortunately, the rainstorm did not last long but became lighter after more than half an hour. Another half an hour later, the sky cleared up. They could not help but feel nervous when they saw what was going on. Here they are. Liu Qingfeng frowned hard. A group of bad guys. I believe Brother Qingqing will beat them away, Wang Ya said in a trembling tone. It was the first time that she had witnessed a great battle of the martial arts world. There are a total of 8 cruise ships, and they're well prepared. I hope Elder Master Gai and his helpers defeat the enemy. A martial artist with obvious strength sighed and said, Unfortunately, I was just promoted to be a martial artist and can't do much to help. Don't worry, we are bound together for good or ill, Liu Qingfeng said as he shook his head. On learning the news, he hurriedly took Liu Jiren here. In his opinion, Mount New Moon was the safest place since everyone knew that he got on well with Zhang Han Yang. Besides, his beloved daughter Liu Jiren fell in love with one of 5 tiger generals in Meng security. Obviously, he would be nosed out wherever he hid. Furthermore, judging by Liu Qingfeng's courage, he did not dare to be discovered but stood there. We're bound to win. The rain stopped. Chen Qingqing and the others also moved. After pondering for a while, Gai Xingkong said, Brother Chen and I will lead the troop to meet the enemy. Qingqing, you'd better stay here with Master Ji to prevent those scoundrels from making trouble. Uncle Gai, I want to go to the front as well. Chen Qingqing looked forward, with his eyes overwhelmed by killing desires and his pupils bestrewed by abnormal darkness. He could no longer suppress his rage and refused to stay in the rear. So he said, Master Jin and Captain Jiang may as well stay here. If there appears any sign of disturbance, we can take effective measures as soon as possible. It's up to you. Leave the rear base for me. I brought an old friend so as to address emergency needs. The 2 of us are qualified to defend this place. Wang shook her head slightly. Upon hearing this, Chen Qingqing and the others felt more at ease. It was apparent that Wang's old friend must be a martial artist at the Divine Realm stage. Let's go. Gai Xingkong stared at the man in bamboo hat and said, It's time to settle all grievances. It'll be a fierce battle, Tanan said slowly. Anyway, Wang Zanping took a deep breath. I'll show how powerful I am this time. let's go. In the blink of an eye, the warlord of Chan clan, Chen Chenking, and Gaik Singkong, who were at the Divine Realm stage, a dozen or so experts at the Grandmaster late stage or peak stage who were invited by Gaik Singkong from the northeast, Wang Zanping, Wang Zanhong, Wang Zanzong, Tanan, as well as the other three martial artists at the Grandmaster late stage from the National Security Agency of Hong Kong, Zilong, Zihu, and 5 other martial artists from Singapore, the old master from the Wrong family, the 2 men at the Grandmaster late stage from Linhai City, the head of the Heavenly Talisman sect and 8 of his helpers at the Grandmaster late stage, as well as the other martial artists who came over because of Zhang Han's fame, all showed up. A total of 50 or 60 people, with great momentum, flew forward and walked on the rolling waves. At this moment, the picture was like that of Pirates of the Caribbean which Xian had shot not long ago. The atmosphere created by the group of skeletons walking on the bottom of the sea was very similar to that created by these martial artists. Unlike the real situation, the scene of the film only existed on the screen and the actors just pretended to fight against each other, yet now, a world-shaking battle was going to begin here. The sky was covered with dense dark clouds at this point, reflecting the emotion of all the martial artists on Mount New Moon. They were really depressed. They guessed that it was a sunny day with a bright sun in the sky in the distance since there existed a touch of blue on the horizon. Did this mean that the forces representing Mount New Moon were still promising in the face of the formidable enemies? My God, each of the 60 experts on Mount New Moon is a famous big shot. Now that they went straight to their enemies, they obviously are going to launch attacks. The leader, namely the warlord of Chan clan, is a well-known superior of the older generation. He hasn't competed with others for many years, and will definitely stun the enemies this time. Since Emperor King was promoted to the Divine Realm stage, he has never fought against others. I guess that he will create another record in his first battle. Unfortunately, his senior brother Zhang Han can't see his achievements anymore. It's really lucky for him to be protected by such an elder brother. Alas, the brotherhood between them is too touching. Wait, look at the other party. There must be more than 200 people. How can 60 people beat 200 enemies? After he finished his words, the onlookers, who had gathered from various buildings on the shore nearby, turned their heads to look at the other side. They saw people, 3 times more than the men led by Emperor King in number, walking over the waves. Such a dense mass of people indeed shocked them. Even Zhao Feng and his men behind looked grave. Take action following the original plan. Zhao Feng commanded. Hundreds of members of the security group were divided into 5 groups. The first group was the biggest one, which was consisted of more than 50 men headed by Instructor Liu, guarding the coastal area on the west of Mount New Moon. The people he led were all well equipped and were armed with real weapons except Instructor Liu, the Wu Dao Grandmaster. The other teams were respectively led by Zhao Feng, Hu, Elder Meng, and Xuyong. Leng followed Zhao Feng to guard the other stronghold on the east of Mount New Moon. Catching sight of more than 200 people ahead, they calculated that each person of Emperor King's party had to fight against 3 enemies at a time, which exerted great pressure on Zhao Feng and his companions. Crack! A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the land. The troops from both sides were getting closer and closer. When they were only 100 meters away from each other, the 2 parties stopped and looked at each other. Time seemed to stand still. The crowd of spectators also could not help holding their breath. They could perceive that the 2 parties were talking to each other, but they could not hear anything. It seems that you have made full preparations, but it's far from enough. The man in bamboo hat said insidiously. That's enough. Gaik Singkong's face darkened and he said coldly, I'll kill you at the very least. Really? I've heard of these words several times, and you're unable to kill me. No one in this world can kill me, for I'm an immortal. Ha ha. A mocking laugh interrupted the man in bamboo hat. Then Chen Chenking said, you just haven't met someone who can kill you. Today, I will stop all of you unless I die. Hiss. His words astonished quite a few opponents. Certainly, they had also heard of Emperor King. They cared about how crazy Emperor King would be rather than his attacks. At this point, the long-faced black man next to the man in bamboo hat stared at the warlord of Chan clan and said slowly with lame Chinese, "I, Liu Odyssey, came here for the divine objects. You can be spared from death if you hand them over, otherwise, you will die. There's another condition," the man in bamboo hat added, "we'll retreat once you hand over the hostess and her daughter on the mountain, as well as the natural precious materials." The man in bamboo hat might have made some promises so that he summoned so many helpers. As for those like Liu Odyssey, they came over for the sake of the divine objects rather than the relationship with the men in bamboo hat. As soon as they finished speaking, people of Chen Shenking's party were all aware that they failed to negotiate. Buzz. A buzzing noise was heard all of a sudden. Then, under many nervous gazes, a stream of golden light flashed, accompanied by dragons and tigers' roars. It was the dragon-tiger spear. Gaik Sinkong suddenly appeared on the left. As for the 50-meter-long golden spear shadow, it seemed to transform into substance and attack the weakest part of the opponent's body. "What?" Liu Odyssey frowned and waved his right hand. 10 palm-sized black skulls drifted over, transforming into layers of energy defense. Even so, Gaik Sinkong still grasped the opportunity to attack since he defended in haste. With flesh and blood flying everywhere, 7 or 8 people died on the spot before they could dodge. What had happened infuriated Liu Odyssey and some of his companions. They neither expected the opponent at the Divine Realm stage to be so shameless nor expected the few people he brought to be so unvigilant. Actually, it was not their fault. They were still negotiating and had thought that the opponents would have given in. No one foresaw that they would suddenly make a move. Furthermore, they aimed at the weakest amongst them. Those who died were the most vulnerable. In addition to the 7 or 8 martial artists at the Grand Master middle stage, there were 4 or 5 injured. They, like frightened wild boars, retreated many meters. "You're courting death." Liu Odyssey took on a cold look and rushed towards Gaik Sinkong while saying, "I'll kill you within 3 moves." The instant he finished his words, another aged voice sounded, "Your opponent is me." Swish. As the warlord of Chan clan appeared in front of Liu Odyssey and slammed, a hundreds of feet wide palm suddenly rose from the seawater beneath Liu Odyssey. The palm was very intelligent and moved straight towards Liu Odyssey as if it were trying to grab a fly. He had heard of Liu Odyssey, a famous expert in Europe. He broke through to the Divine Realm stage 20 years ago, was promoted to the middle stage 10 years ago, and reached the last stage 7 years ago. By right of his powerful strength, he defeated other masters so easily and was acknowledged as the most powerful man of the man in bamboo hat's party. "It's just a trifling skill." Liu Odyssey sneered. After he waved his right hand, the skull grew 100-fold larger, easily resisting the warlord of Chan clan. "Bear my move once again." The warlord of Chan clan's eyes flickered, and a vortex was suddenly formed beneath Liu Odyssey's feet in the shape of a taikai. The 2 small fish that represented yin and yang suddenly spat 2 threads, which knitted a huge net beside Liu Odyssey. When Liu Odyssey faced this move, his face slightly darkened. When he was about to resist, the warlord of Chan clan suddenly slapped 3 times to the side. Enormous palm prints flew toward the group of more than 20 people. "You think too much." Another golden-haired old man moved and came to the palm prints made by the warlord of Chan clan. As he drew a circle with his hands, clusters of flames appeared out of nowhere all of a sudden, burning up the palm prints of the warlord of Chan clan. At this time, he intended to launch an attack on the warlord of Chan clan, but a light black sword shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Swish. The golden-haired elder dodged to the side and looked at Chen Chenking in an instant. "You're courting death." He changed his route and headed for Chen Chenking. As for the others, they dispersed in all directions while attacking. The man in bamboo hat stared at Gaik Sinkong with coldness, while Gaik Sinkong was also staring at the man in bamboo hat. The enemies were jealous of each other when they met, yet, Only Gaik Singkong cherished a grudge. As for the man in bamboo hat, he did not care whether he was an enemy or not, since he had killed countless people. "You must die this time," the man in bamboo hat said in a hoarse voice. "Ha ha, one always forgets pain when the scars are cicatrized. I've already killed you once, and this is the second time." Gaik Singkong laughed wildly. He grabbed the dragon tiger spear with his right hand and rushed over, gritting his teeth. He shouted inwardly, "Father, second uncle, youngest uncle, I'm going to avenge you." Although he knew that the man in bamboo hat would appear again even if he killed his doppelganger, he could no longer control the hatred in his mind. He rushed to the man in bamboo hat and waved his spear 4 times. The huge spear shadows frightened many people, but each of them was resisted. The area they occupied was getting larger and larger, on which the generals were fighting against generals, and the soldiers were competing with soldiers. They fought with no rule. Once they saw their companions were in danger, they would assist them with permission. Even so, Chen Chenking, Gaik Singkong, and the warlord of Chan clan unconsciously killed more than 20 opponents at the very beginning. During this period, Liu Odyssey, the man in bamboo hat, and 5 other masters at the Divine Realm stage also launched attacks several times, but unfortunately, they were not effective. That was just because the people of the Heavenly Talisman sect appeared there. For the sake of returning the favor, and the warlord of Chan clan, the head of the sect, and the dozen or so people he brought took out their most valuable talismans. Seeing that the battle had begun, they immediately threw out thousands of defensive talismans. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Layers of defensive energy stopped the opponents. The 7 men at the Divine Realm stage, including the man in bamboo hat and Liu Odyssey, attacked with irresistible force. In the end, the energy dissipated into the protective cover. After the martial artist consumed some of their energy, the enemies began to move quickly. They began to fight with their weapons in their hands. Various lights shone in all directions, and the scope of the battlefield became wider and wider, with horrible energy fluctuating everywhere. On seeing that, many people turned pale in shock, especially those martial artists gathered on the shore. Their faces were a little pale. They indeed started fighting. "It's too scary. Our martial artists may be shattered by the aftermath of such fluctuations. How dreadful they are." Chapter 680, A Dangerous Situation. More than 800 spectators were standing on both sides of shores nearby Mount New Moon. Moreover, the number was increasing rapidly. Under these people's gazes, the party led by Emperor King and another headed by the man in bamboo hat stood facing each other with a distance of 100 meters. They all felt they were surrounded by an atmosphere of great tension. The next conversation determined whether they would compete with each other or not. To their surprise, a spear shadow appeared out of nowhere as soon as these people got the wind up. Swish, swish, swish. Soon after, various lights flashed and everyone began to move. If they reduced speed by dozens of times, it might look like a martial arts movie with high ornamental value. Now, the witnesses could only see these competitors dispersing quickly, with all kinds of horrible waves fluctuating. Only a few people present noticed that a small group of about a dozen martial artists led by the man in bamboo hat had been annihilated in an instant. Hiss! How dangerous the occasion was. A variety of lights kept shining in that sea area. Compared to the sea, however, the battlefield was still too small. As for the people on the shore, they felt that the fighters were in great danger. It's tangled warfare. Oh my god, such confused fighting is too fierce. They saw Gaik Singkong, Emperor King, the warlord of Chan clan, and the man in bamboo hat seizing every chance to attack the weaker enemies while they were locked in battle. The men of the group led by the men in bamboo hat also grabbed the opportunities to attack without mercy. Almost all of their attacks would be defended against. Within 3 minutes, more than a dozen people of the man in bamboo hat's party were killed. At this moment, those who were slightly weaker in strength stepped aside from both sides, flanking Danan and his companions. Fortunately, With the assistance of the disciples of the Heavenly Talisman sect and plenty of talismans, the troops did not suffer great losses. Even so, Zhang and his companions were steadily losing ground. The enemies were so large in number that there were 3 times more of them. Furthermore, in view of the opponent's oppressive strength, all the witnesses considered that the party headed by Emperor King was going to lose this battle. They'll absolutely be defeated. Xiang Qishan, who hid in the forest, sneered and said, "The situation is pretty similar to what I had guessed. The enemy is well prepared, and Zhang Han's connection is limited though strong. Master, when shall we go up the mountain? The 2 roads forward are all guarded by the 2 groups of people. Instructor Liu, one of the 5 tiger generals, is on the right beach, while Zhao Feng, Zhang Han Yang's first disciple, is on the left. They're just non-entities. We can assault from the beach, go up the cliff and march forward via the back hill after Emperor King and his men are defeated. Since the buildings on the front of the mountain all belong to them, we'll get closer to the divine objects from the back hill. After getting the treasures, we can withdraw from the east." Xiang Qishan stared at Mount New Moon for a while and gave the final response. Other forces basically had their own goals. As for the onlookers, they had been marveling at the energy fluctuations ahead. On the main battlefield, Gai Xingkong and the men in bamboo hat were fighting against each other in a chaotic battle. The battle between Liu Odyssey and the warlord of Chan clan was in full swing. Emperor King was competing with the blonde-haired old man. As time went by, the blonde-haired elder, who was good at using fire, found that he was somewhat suppressed. He suffered one defeat after another within 5 moves. A hint of horror flashed in his eyes. If this were a battle between the 2 of them, he would have definitely been defeated and run away in less than 3 minutes. "Emperor King, you're indeed awesome." After exchanging one move with Chen King, the golden-haired elder stepped back and said, "You'll be a giant who is able to conquer the whole world after 10 or 20 years, but it's a pity that you meet us today." Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 martial artists at the Divine Realm stage who had been watching by the side rushed up in an instant. One held a blade, while the other carried a 5-meter-long iron chain. Bang! 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 The 2 men, together with the golden-haired elder, performed their moves and stirred up the most intense fluctuations in 3 seconds. Since they crashed frequently, a series of booming sounds were heard. Chen King held the demon dancing sword and was forced to retreat. At this moment, the warlord of Chan clan frowned. Just as he was about to come to Chen King, Liu Odyssey directly blocked his way. "You can't get by." The stronger one at the God Realm late stage of the 2 who had been watching in the rear came straight over to stop the warlord of Chan clan. As for the other man, he ran directly to Gai Xingkong and was ready to defeat him with the man in bamboo hat. 7 against 3. Others were also trapped in unequal battles. Zhang Yanlan, Wang Zanping, and their companions were under great pressure since they had to fight against 2 or 3 opponents respectively. The battlefield gradually transferred to New Moon Bay. The warlord of Chan clan and 2 of his helpers were unable to get away in the face of the wild attacks of the 7 men at the Divine Realm stage. During the battle, 2 men at the Divine Realm stage even planned to attack the Grand Masters in the rear, but Gai Xingkong and the warlord of Chan clan resisted all of them. The battlefield on the sea was in the shape of an awl at this point. Several martial artists at the Divine Realm stage fought against each other at the tip, while the others were behind them. The waves became wilder and wilder, stirring up several giant whirlpools from time to time. What a world-shaking battle it was! Kaboom! Suddenly, a deafening sound rang out from the center. The crowd looked over and saw a bolt of lightning flashing in the sky as the man with an iron chain swung it upwards. The lightning gathered on his iron chain, making a loud noise, and he then threw it directly to Chen King. Retreat. Chen King's eyes narrowed, intending to elude it, but there were 2 other men at the Divine Realm stage in front of him. "You can't escape. Go to hell." The 2 of them laughed grimly. The blonde-haired old man clapped his hands and shouted in rage, Dragon rising from the sea of fire. Ow, ow, ow. The dragon roar was deafening. Clatter. A 100-meter high vortex emerged in the sea. The next moment, waves of seawater rose, turning into a red glow. Finally, it turned into a sea of fire, as if the seawater had become gasoline, which could be ignited easily. Ha ha. At this time, Chen Qingqing burst into laughter. How dared he to summon the fire dragon in front of me? A faint black mist suddenly curled up in his eyes all of a sudden. Ow! A faint illusion, which looked like a blurry and sinister dragon's head, suddenly appeared in the black clouds above. The move he performed was one of the secret skills of all 8 drought demonic dragon, namely demonic dragon roaring, conquering the vast universe. The sound seemed to turn into waves and shattered the fire dragon that had just soared into pieces in an instant. What? The golden-haired old man's pupils contracted, for he did not expect that Chen Qingqing actually mastered such a fierce move and broke through his final secret skill so easily. Then he looked at Chen Qingqing and said slowly, "Emperor King, you're indeed a strong opponent and deserve to be one of the top talents in the East. Considering that you're so formidable, we won't let you live any longer." The instant he finished his words, he was ready to launch the next attack. Yet at this very moment, the iron chain that had absorbed the lightning and the 100-meter-long blade approached Chen Qingqing. Whoosh! He failed to escape from the attacking area even though he retreated quickly. Buzz! A few more layers of defense suddenly surrounded Chen Qingqing, but were still not enough to defend against the 2 moves. Boom, boom, 2 violent shockwaves appeared. Chen Qingqing retreated 100 meters to the right, with his qi and blood stirred up. A trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In fact, the 3 of them had performed their secret skills just now. At such a crucial moment, no one would show any mercy. Although Chen Qingqing had already been injured, his wildness was stimulated in the face of the other 2 attacks. Kill! Chen Qingqing cried in anger. Considering that the golden-haired elder was the weakest among the 3, he intended to kill him first, and then he did not have to worry too much while facing the other 2 people. Therefore, he rushed to the old man. Unfortunately, things went contrary to his wishes. As soon as he rushed forward and resisted the attack of the golden-haired old man, the other 2 men got close to Chen Qingqing. Bang, 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 bang. With another dense burst of thuds, Chen Qingqing retreated rapidly again after holding on for 30 seconds. As he retreated, the 3 men followed him with their threats, leaving no chance for Chen Qingqing to take a break. Puff! After 1 minute of fighting, Chen Qingqing's body was covered with blood and his face became a little paler. On seeing what happened, the warlord of Chan clan felt quite anxious. He had never been so angry for many years. Activate! He drew circles with both hands and suddenly summoned a black and white mark. Unfortunately, the warlord of Chan clan had no choice but to retreat constantly since his opponent was Liu Odyssey, the strongest among them. Liu Odyssey was very close to the Earth Realm stage, not to mention that another man at the God Realm late stage launched attacks at the same time. As for Gaixingkong, he was completely suppressed by the man in bamboo hat and a master. His breath was in disorder, and he had also suffered serious injuries. Tanan and his companions in the rear were deeply troubled, retreating at a very high speed. At this moment, Jiang Yanlan said anxiously, "Retreat. Master Ji." Her cry for help was heard. Whoosh! A figure rapidly rushed over from Mount New Moon. It was Wang. As he approached the battlefield, he said in a cold voice, "I've informed you that I'll kill you all as long as you dare to come over." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He came in from behind. At this time, there were more than 20 grandmasters from the man in bamboo hat's party battling on the right. Wang seized the opportunity to perform 7 moves in 2 seconds. Liu Odyssey and his companions wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Puff, puff. 20 or so martial artists who went deep into their enemy's rear all turned into a bloody mist and drifted away with the wind without exception. Retreat quickly. At this point, the others led by the man in bamboo hat retreated a few hundred meters. As Liu Odyssey nodded to the person next to him, the person rushed straight to Chen Chenking. Facing 4 martial artists at the Divine Realm stage alone, Chen Chenking would probably die before long. Whoosh! Wang gave up killing the other enemies on his right but rushed to Chen Chenking. Before he took action, 2 men at the Divine Realm stage came over, which relieved Chen Chenking's stress. More and more spectating martial artists were stunned by what was happening. How can Emperor King, Wang, Gai Xingkong, and the warlord of Chan clan win in the face of 7 men at the Divine Realm stage? Haven't you noticed that the group headed by Emperor King has retreated more than 1,000 meters in the past 5 minutes and kept moving backward? Once they retreat to the sea area in front of Mount New Moon, they're likely to be defeated. Is Emperor King going to lose? Of course. Xiang Qishan's eyes were full of tension and excitement. Even Wang can't reverse the situation. It's time for me to harvest when they are about to fail. At this point, the force on the front left of Xiang Qishan's party had already sneaked to the left. After walking out of the jungle, they moved faster and faster. As they were hundreds of meters away from Mount New Moon, Zhao Feng and his men gathered from the side and stood in front of these people. Get out of the way if you want to live, the man who took the lead said calmly. Leave now if you want to live. Zhao Feng's gaze became cold. No one spoke any nonsense after they finished speaking. Whoosh, whoosh. As people moved, the 2 parties began to dogfight. The man who took the lead was at the Grand Master middle stage, overpowering Zhao Feng and Leng Yu alone. Those who saw what happened all realized that Zhao Feng and his companions would be defeated sooner or later. Meanwhile, groups of people showed up from all directions of Mount New Moon, aiming to fight for the divine objects. Ow! On this cloudy day, near the dense forest of Mount New Moon, 2 light blue eyes, which burst out fierceness, were fixed on a dozen people in front of them. Senior brother, our Iron Cloud Palm sect is about to possess a divine object this time. Ha ha ha, that's right. Emperor King and his men are badly battered on the sea. Although there are guards in the backyard, I believe we'll definitely succeed this time with the help of eldest brother. In the praises of more than a dozen people, the eldest brother put on a proud expression and said, the situation is the same as what I've guessed. At the very worst, one of the 5 tiger generals is guarding the route. The people on Mount New Moon are so few that they can't withstand our attacks. Ha ha ha, you're right, senior brother. A charming junior sister ran over and ogled her eldest brother at this time, and then she said, eldest brother, you'll be promoted to an elder of our sect if you make contributions this time. By then I won't have forgotten you. Eldest brother replied with a smile and gave his junior sister, who frequently followed him into the woods, a look. So, the junior sister stuck out the tip of her tongue and was about to say something. Puff. Suddenly, a pool of blood splashed on the faces of eldest brother and the others present. They froze in an instant. The junior sister had been killed on the spot. What is it? Eldest brother was also stunned. He had reached the Grand Master middle stage in the sect and was expected to break through to the late stage in 2 years. It was not the first time he had gone down the mountain but had taken others to do a task. He actually saw such a strange scene. What was that shadow just now? Puff. Another voice rang out from behind. Everyone immediately turned around and saw one of their younger brothers was only left with half of his body. Puff. From behind this group of people, a voice was heard again. Hurry up, make a circle. Eldest brother said in a trembling voice. He completely forgot what he had learned before at this moment. Puff, puff. Accompanied by dreadful voices, eldest brother felt desperate. He madly attacked in all directions but failed to touch any shadows of his enemy. In the end, only he was left. He could have left, but he gave up. He looked up into the sky in confusion, which was covered by dark clouds. As they gradually turned crimson, his breaths slowly faded away. He saw what the black shadow was. It was a wolf. Dong Fanxing, was actually killed by a wolf after paying so much effort to cultivate. He was not resigned to die. Still, If he knew that Little Hai was a dog, he would die with a grievance. Among the forces that came there, in addition to some formidable people, there were a number of smatterers like him. After all, there were various kinds of people in the world. After all these people died, Little Hai stopped and looked at the right side of the front mountain since he heard Dai's roar. He moved and quickly rushed over. Dai and Elder Meng were facing more than 30 people and fighting in the melee at this time. To everyone's surprise, there was a martial artist at the Divine Realm stage among them. Why did a man at the Divine Realm stage launch a sneak attack? Elder Meng felt as if he was about to die. After that man at the Divine Realm stage casually struck out his fist, Dai appeared in front of him to protect him. In the face of danger, they chose to fight together. Elder Meng felt warm. Although Dai was a spirit beast, it was much more credible than the martial artists of the outside world. Dai, we may not see the sun tomorrow. Looking at Dai beside him, Elder Meng suddenly burst into laughter. Even if his opponent was a man at the Divine Realm stage, he was still fearless. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Dai scratched its head and felt a little dull, glancing at the castle on the mountain with a sense of spirituality. There lived the hostess and the little host that it wanted to protect. Since it met its host, who saved its life, its strength gradually increased. It remembered the scenes of playing with the little host on the back hill. It threw the little host high and let her sit on its shoulder and belly. It remembered the gentle hostess and its brother Little Hai. It could not bear to part with them. Dai pouted and reluctantly looked away. When it turned its head to look forward, the tenderness in her eyes disappeared, replaced by a touch of fierce wildness. The people in front of it. Ow! Dai suddenly roared. It was less than 3 meters tall, but it became taller at this time, rising to 5 meters. It strode to the god State Strong, who was seemingly in his 30s. Alas! The man sighed softly and said, I came out of seclusion only because I intend to take 2 divine objects. Perhaps I won't kill you if you escape, but now you are bound to die since you appeared in front of me. I can't tell whether you are naive or stupid. Accompanied by his voice, a 10-meter diameter as your ball slammed into Dai and Elder Meng. Time seemed to stand still. Dai, Elder Meng, and more than a dozen members of the security group all knew they couldn't resist this move. Fleeing seemed to become an extravagant hope. Looking at the azure sphere that was getting closer and closer, they stayed calm. Buzz. Just at this critical moment, a powerful fluctuation formed a blue air shield in front of Dai. Zap. A seemingly electric current friction emerged as the sphere and the shield touched each other. Within 3 breaths of time, 2 streams of energy counteracted each other. When they dissipated, the man at the Divine Realm stage looked at the back of Dai. Oh, there's actually a latent expert